Well, happy Tuesday to you. It is George Brauchler live with you, not here from Denver, Colorado, where you are, or the parts nearby. I am in a place called Hamilton, New Jersey. Spent yesterday at a local college here speaking to, I don't know, a couple hundred students, law enforcement members of the DA's office out here in Monmouth County, which is where I was. But I'll be with you for the whole show. My thanks to Jeff Hunt yesterday for coming in and covering the last hour and a half-ish of that show as I navigated my way from the Big Apple down to New Jersey. But I'll be with you today and tomorrow, and then Thursday. I think the big PB is in the seat for me, Pete Boyles, as I'm now speaking to another 3-state law enforcement group out of North Carolina, and then I will be back in person with the BT, with the Billy Thorpes on Friday morning. That's, by the way, presuming that United does all the stuff we've contracted to do, and that's been a real issue for them lately. Here's what's going on with the weather. Breezy and cooler today, 68 degrees. 67 drops down tomorrow. Now, I can't tell you how breezy or cool it is because I haven't been out there. Here in New Jersey, it's been lovely. I mean, it was a little chilly last night, but otherwise, it was lovely. In Denver, though, by the time I get back, it'll be 72 degrees, sunny and pleasant with a bright burning ball of fire in the sky. 75 on Saturday, which is good. Weekend, good weather. Sunday, baseball for us, 80 degrees. And then Monday, who knows? And nobody really knows at this point. They just keep making stuff up. Again, hollowed out cloud today. Don't know why it isn't a white cloud like on Thursday. It's just a mystery. It says, Billy says, I think just the weather intern is doing their own thing. Now, Billy, I have not been able to be out there in a few days to enjoy whatever Colorado's offering weather-wise. What's it been like?
It was pretty yesterday. It was nice and warm, but a little bit windy, and we're going to be cooler today. A little chilly. This morning, waking up in basically low 50s, high 40s. When rolling out of the
68
house this
isn't
morning.
horrible.
No, not bad at all. So not horrible. I just keep watching across the street. We help out with the renters across the street. And they have a giant maple tree, and the thing drops so many leaves, and it's starting to drop, and it's the first one in the neighborhood to drop, and I have to go rake that. I rake that yard maybe 4 or 5 times every season, so I'm just kind of figuring out when I'm going to make the first. Oh yeah, and normally it's 4 or 5 bags a trip, so it is huge. So I got to figure out.
You do this for them because you're trying to get into heaven, or why?
No, it's they've got several renters inside the house, and I can do enough little small jobs and things around, so they pay us a little tiny bit of money every month. So I go and I make sure that the air conditioner is running okay. I unclog the dish disposal. I make sure that if faucets are leaking, stuff like that. I go take care of that. Take care of the yard, front yard, backyard. It's just so the person owns the house, so that she doesn't have to contract with a handyman all the time or have someone come over. So it's just kind of a little tiny bit of money so that I can go over there and take care of the incidentals. And then later on, when something big happens, she has someone come over. Like there's someone coming over to look at an issue with the sprinkler system today, because I don't do sprinkler systems. That is awful. I hate them with a passion. So that is one thing I refuse to do. So I'm going to have to hang out with a guy later today that's coming over to look at one of the heads in the sprinkler system that's shot. I think someone ran over it or something. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Avoid having a sprinkler. I would definitely avoid having a sprinkler.
They're wonderful when they work. And here in Colorado, they don't always want to work, simply because of just getting water in the lines and breakages and just how our soil moves. And yeah, they can be a real headache. It can be really awful. So when they're working, they're fantastic.
Jeff was on for me when I punched out yesterday, which was so fantastic that he was able to come in and do that. He's just such a busy dude.
Yeah.
And he does such a great job. I love his energy. Just so that we don't end up copying what Jeff did. What sort of stuff did Jeff talk about yesterday?
Oh, he talked about looking at bringing safe drug injection sites back here. He looked at, because the Dems are floating that one again, looking at voucher programs. He did talk a little bit.
They are. Hold on. I thought you were joking. They're really trying to bring back safe injection sites?
Yeah. There's a little bit of a test balloon that they're looking at getting that thing rolling again. Also looking at voucher systems, a couple of things that they're floating about, abortion and changing access and actually getting some government funding for abortions here in the state. So did that and talked a touch about McCarthy a little bit about the McCarthy-Gates tug of war happening inside of the GOP, in the House. It's pretty much
this thing's getting out of control here.
Yeah, it is.
There's nothing good for America
Yeah.
in this particular battle between these two. And
No, not.
I don't know how much of it's ego. Candidly, I don't care. This is just juvenile nonsense.
It really is. It is very juvenile.
We have so many other problems at the congressional level to think it's going to be delayed or interrupted so that we can have this sort of pissing contest. It's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It's really, really silly. And it is, I think it's just an ego thing. And I don't know why that Gates is making this such an issue. And I don't know why McCarthy's playing along, because as we talked about last week, if this was McConnell would cut him off the knees and then say, okay,
somehow,
that's it.
But somehow, and I don't know how he does it, but he would do it.
What he would do is he would go around the votes that Gates wants, and just we talked about it, and that's exactly what McCarthy ended up doing. Is if it was McConnell, when Gates was holding up the budget, McConnell would have walked over to the Dems and said, all right, clean bill. We get a clean bill. We pass the clean bill. We're cool for a while. And then you let me deal with the yahoos over here in the corner, and I'll take care of that myself. And the Dems would go, yeah, clean bill. We got a deal. And they'd run that through. And then McConnell would turn around to the people that were, yelling and screaming and wanting their own thing, turn around and go, you happy now? You see what happens? You want to get your own thing involved. You want to make sure that it's something that can't pass both chambers. We're not playing that. Now, you can be crazy if you want all the time, but I'll cut you out of the process. That's what he'd do. In a second, he would do that. And he would do it with, he has enough relationships across the aisle with the Dems. Even Biden said that he views McConnell as a friend. They spent a lot of time in the Senate together. He disagrees with him ideologically, but as a friend, if McConnell was in a situation that he needed Dem votes in order to get a clean bill through, he'd get it through. He wouldn't play. He wouldn't go around and say, oh, Matt, what do you want? What do you want? He'd cut Matt off the knees and then say, you happy? You can go out there and do all your interviews, do all your social media, but you're not passing crap unless you come through me. That's what he'd do. And it would end this now. But McCarthy doesn't have that in him. He doesn't have the spine.
Yeah, I wonder, too, though, if he isn't in a much more weakened position because he only enjoys a few seats for the Republicans. And even within his own caucus, you do have those, I don't know how many it was, 15, 20 or so of the anti-Kevin guys who gave in only because he reduced down the number of votes needed to cause him to have to defend his seat to 1 or so. It used to be 5 or something like that. With a
very, very, very small majority, McConnell was able to get Amy Coney Barrett through under the wire right there during an election season in which he said he wasn't going to ever do that, and that's why he held up the Garland appointment. So when it comes to brass tacks, McConnell knows what he's doing. And so that's the thing, is that he is much more vicious, much more ruthless than what McCarthy is. And he doesn't understand how to play the game at this level. And McCarthy is letting Gates make this into an issue where McConnell would just cut him off the knees and say, that's it. You're cute, little boy. You go back and you play hairstylist or whatever the hell you want to do in Florida. But this is where the big boys come and play. Yeah.
I don't know. It's got to end here. I mean, so far, the things that are taking place right now, I don't think leave any lasting marks because we're more than a year away from the general. But if this stuff is going on a year from now, hell, even 9 months from now, I worry about the impact it would have. Right now, it feels like Republicans have an opportunity to do some stuff here nationwide. But, man, we're very, very good at blowing our feet off. We're very good at turning our own guns onto ourselves. And calling it self-defense.
Yeah, remarkably good at that, which is it's striking. It's the difference between, and we talked about it in the primary, that right now going through the Republican primary, that we understand the baggage that Donald Trump carries. He lost the last election to Joe Biden, and he is right now the runaway winner of the primary. Where if we go back to the primary prior to 2020,
maybe he wins the general too. If you look at some of those polls, man, you don't know.
We'll see. We'll see about that one. And this is the thing that I keep coming back to is I have a hard time wrapping my head around the idea that Donald Trump is a better candidate now than he was in 2019 rolling into 2020. That's the part that I have. I understand getting to the general, and I understand what polls say at this point. I have a hard time. I have a hard time, though,
could be true, too, and that is everyone knows who Trump is, but now we know who Biden is. Like, we could have speculated before, but now people know who he is, or at least they suspect they know who he is.
Yeah, and we'll see. It's because, again, some of the narrative on both sides is, in my opinion, not necessarily accurate. There are some weaknesses on Biden, but some of the things that people say are necessarily weaknesses of his are not, nor is he responsible for that. But that we can get down the road further for that one, and some of that has to do with economic conditions, of which the president has very little impact on, but gets the blame for. And so there are some questions
and the
there.
credit, by the way, when things go well. You can hear Biden talk about Bidenomics, and we created all these jobs and all that other stuff.
Yes and no, because it's, again, I don't want to go down it, but if you look at the only thing I'd put on the table is the idea of inflation. There is this idea that Biden somehow created this big, huge boom in inflation in this country. And if that's true, and he's responsible for it, then he's also responsible to bringing it back into the norm. And it can't be both. It can't be that Biden is this awful person with the economy and the inflation exploded, and then he's not responsible for bringing it right back into heel. Or maybe he didn't have that much influence in particular. But a lot of us still walk around going, oh, this inflation is killing me. This inflation is killing me. Inflation's back down around 3%, which is normally where it sits. It is regular at this point, but nobody talks about that. Nobody turns around and says, wow, what is this? In fact, you go and you talk to the G8 and the G20, they want to know what the hell Biden is doing in order to keep his inflation rate so low, because his is lower than most of the rest of the EU and the developed world. And people worry about that. And they're like, how is he able to do this? But again, it's more perception than it is reality. So, but again, back to where I was going with this one is Trump is now the runaway leader.
I don't know that it's just perception, because reality, you're talking about aggregate inflation. I think for most people, you go to the gas pump and you fill up. You don't need anybody to use any numbers with you. You can see that the price of gas has exploded. And that is for many a weekly reminder of what's going on out there. And then if you try to buy a house,
Joe Biden
that's real.
But Joe Biden is responsible for the gas prices. How? Show me what it is that he's responsible for in the increase in gas prices.
Joe Biden's approach to energy development is so anti-energy development that it causes energy companies to relook at how they're going to expend resources to continue to develop oil and gas here in America.
So the idea that over the past 5 months we've had OPEC rolling back production specifically specifically to raise the price of crude oil. But we're looking at the idea that we're sitting here and saying, oh, gas prices are rising. It must be Biden because the energy companies are now scared. Really? It doesn't have to do with the people in OPEC.
Oh, specifically, I'm sure OPEC saying has a lot to do with it too. Why?
I know, but OPEC.
His relationship with OPEC may be the worst that we've had in decades.
I'm not so certain we can go. I'm not so certain we can go that far. I'm not so certain that we can get there. But the issue is that when OPEC is reducing their supply into the market, there's not a heck of a lot any president can do at that point. And no president has really had any sort of success getting OPEC to turn that spigot back on. But laying it at the feet of Biden.
Operating at the level of production we could have been operating at. Not the fact that it's like, hey, we produce more today than we did when Trump was in office. That's not the measure. The measure is where would we be today but for the interference and meddling with the energy market by the Biden administration. And I don't know the answer to what that bigger number is. I just know it's a bigger number, and that would decrease the impact of OPEC.
You'd have to show me a lot more of the direct interference of the Biden administration into that energy market. Some of that, yes, we have the permits not being granted, but we have thousands upon thousands of other permits that are not being developed. I have a hard time coming to the table saying because we did not give the energy companies more permits than they already have, and they have permits they're not using, permits they're not exploring, permits they're not developing, that somehow that is a constraint on their ability to produce energy. They aren't using the resources they have now. Complaining that the reason we have these higher energy prices is because they don't have access to potentially more resources, I disagree with. I think you need to go and search and develop the resources you have, then talk to me about wanting more.
It's not like gas prices only started to increase when OPEC took action. They'd been increasing under Biden before OPEC took action. OPEC may have put them on steroids, but it wasn't like, hey, everything was $3 or less gallon of gas, and then all of a sudden OPEC showed up under Biden.
But it also was that the gas prices went up when Russia invaded Ukraine and then went back down afterwards. And it was, oh my gosh, look at this horrible thing that Biden was doing. We've got $4 and $5 a gallon gas, and then it went back down. And then it slowly started to creep up as the supply was constrained. And, OPEC slowly constrained the supply. And that is the largest mover inside of that. The other one you have to look at is what are the marginal, what are the profit margins that the oil and gas companies are getting compared to 2 and 3 and 4 years ago. Here's a hint. They're higher. So their profit margins are higher. And that's the only way you get there is by charging more for what you're doing. You can't do that by saying, well, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars more to get this out of the ground. That then translates into your costs.
That's not true either. You could also get savings from economies of scale and efficiencies through technology and other development techniques. So there are other reasons to increase a profit margin other than just increasing your prices.
Yeah, but none of those existed according to this inside of the oil and gas industry, because you yourself said that Biden was constraining the oil and gas industry here in America. So then when you have those companies seeing a higher profit margin, they don't do it by increasing economies of scale. That's the thing they couldn't do at that point.
But the technology is real. Fracking is proof of that. Fracking,
and we're producing
at the
more
level that it does.
Yeah, and we're producing more with fracking. Yeah, I mean
that's right.
Yeah, we are overproducing based on the amount that we're importing. It was about 1% more under Trump, and it's over 3% now with Biden. Okay.
Yeah.
Again,
I don't think energy independence is predicated on that. I think our energy independence has to be whatever OPEC does, it has de minimis impact on us because the fuel that we're developing through refineries and all that other stuff
then
is all
by
here.
By that, we would have no president that would give us energy independence. And the idea that we were energy independent under Donald Trump would be a fallacy. And Donald Trump was measuring energy independence based on the fact that we were producing more than we are importing, which is the same way that Biden is measuring it. So when Donald Trump says that we were energy independent, that is the measurement he is using, that we were producing more than we were importing and exporting more.
You're suggesting though that Joe Biden is the equivalent of Donald Trump in terms of energy production here in America.
No, but I'm saying that
how would you compare him? More or less aggressive on energy development?
Less aggressive on energy development, yet I don't see a huge negative inside of that energy market compared to manipulations that are going on elsewhere. Is what Biden doing hurting energy prices? Yes. In some cases, yes, absolutely. But is it a huge part of the increase? No, I don't see that. I see the other constraints elsewhere in the system. And that's okay. That's okay. I mean, we can sit there and we can get as mad as we want about the gas prices going up and we can blame Joe Biden. However, the direct cause is OPEC at this point. They are the ones that are constraining supply. That's it. It feels
like that's also, doesn't it feel like that's a Biden issue also? Like, who is it we entrust to have international relations with organizations that could impact our country economically abroad and here? It sounds like the president of the United States. It's not like he can just sit around and go, that darn OPEC, I just wish they would do things that were better for America.
Yeah.
Guy's got to have a relationship with the Middle East, and his sucks.
No, it doesn't.
It's awful.
No, not at all, actually. If you looked at the most recent interview where they sat down, and who was it on Fox that sat down with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and he said that he trusts Biden. He thinks Biden is on top of it. Didn't say that Biden was losing it or slipping at all or was too old. Said that he trusted him, enjoyed working with him, and had no problem.
That explains OPEC.
No, but you're saying that Biden had a crappy relationship with him. And I'm directly demonstrating. There was an interview recently with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia saying that he does not have a crappy relationship with Joe Biden. That statement that you made, I understand what
Crown Prince says that.
Yeah.
I get what they say versus what they do. What is it about what's OPEC doing that says we value American relationship?
What OPEC is doing says we value the price of oil. And excuse me,
they've been doing this for 30 years.
Hang on a second.
Why aren't they doing it for 30 years?
They have been doing it for 30 years. Have you not been paying attention? They've been manipulating the market for 30 years.
It just hasn't been this bad.
And explain to me this. Explain to me why OPEC should be super concerned about America. Because based on what I'm looking at, OPEC should be super concerned about them and their profit margins and what they can sell their barrel of oil for. That's what they need to make the priority. And I'm not mad at them for saying they're going to increase or decrease supply. That's what their role is. I dislike it, but I can't sit there and go, why aren't you doing this to help America? Why should they?
No,
what is the
that's
motivation?
Biden's job. It's not OPEC's job to care about us. It's about Biden's job to make them do things that are better for us when it comes, or at least not negative for us when it comes to oil production. And this idea that, hey, this is just what they do, then why haven't we had $5 gallons of gas for the past 10 years?
Well, a $5 gallon of gas does exist in some places based on gas taxes and other things, but there are a number of reasons for that.
But why haven't we had it for 10 years? Why doesn't OPEC just do this 100% of the time?
Because of how markets work. Because you understand that there is a point in which you can price the oil at a point in which it doesn't make any sense for someone to go out there and buy it because you priced it out of the market. There also is a point on the lower end that it constrains supply and constrains development because it is so inexpensive to produce the oil. It doesn't pay for me to pull it out of the ground. That's what we had earlier on when the American oil companies were suffering because prices of oil were so low. It was cheaper for us to import it from Saudi Arabia or somewhere else than to actually pull it out of our own ground, because it would cost us more to pull the oil out of our soil than it would to actually purchase it. That's just how the economics works. And OPEC has been doing this. If it is Joe Biden's fault that OPEC has been raising and lowering these oil prices, then you have to also say it was Donald Trump's fault when it happened under him, Barack Obama's fault when it happened under him.
It didn't happen like
Clinton's
this under him. And I don't blame.
Yes, it did.
It didn't happen like this, man.
No,
it wasn't like this.
You didn't think and you didn't feel it this way. But the fact that it didn't happen is not true. It did happen. Yes, OPEC often constrains supply based on what is happening inside the market.
I know what OPEC does. I know what OPEC does. I'm telling you that every single voter out there that has to fill up their car senses a difference. And they do not, and they cannot rightfully say this is all OPEC's fault. That would be false.
If they don't understand how the economics of oil prices work, not my fault. You go out there and you fill your gas tank up, be as stupid as you want. Blame whoever you want. You can get mad at SpongeBob SquarePants if you want. Don't care, but don't blame me if you're stupid. Can't fix that.
I appreciate that you think that Biden is completely blameless in what has gone on with fuel prices and energy production. Like he's just walking around and things are happening. He's like, gosh darn it, I wish I could do something about it.
Didn't say that. No.
What is he responsible for then with fuel prices? Then maybe just tell us what he is responsible for.
I believe that Joe Biden has restricted some of our offshore drilling way too much. That could be a benefit. I also think that he should incentivize the uses of the existing permits by those oil and gas companies. And I think that before the oil and gas companies come, and rather than him just shutting off all the permits, I think that what they need to do is incentivize using the resources they already have. I also disagree with some of the policies he has towards Middle East, and I do believe he can have them increase oil and production. But then again, but as a whole, the idea that he has tanked our energy economy, I don't agree with. I don't think that can be, I think it can be borne up by the facts. But I'm going to go see who's going to yell at me on the phone here, because I'm sure this is going to be about
hopefully it's not management, because that is as likely as anything else. Some texts that have come in here. Why would you develop when you are under complete attack every day from the administration? Here's one: Democrats shutting down fracking caused the whole inflation Bidenomics malaise. We are producing more than we're importing right now. George, tell Billy that not every permit will produce oil. Biden has curtailed development on federal land. It's constricting development and our oil independence. Thanks, Gino. That's true. There's something else too, and that is that these oil companies don't plan for 12 months down the road. The investment in the machinery, the personnel, all this stuff, it's like 10 plus years. I'm probably even getting that wrong. I should probably have Dan Haley on from the oil and gas dudes from Koga to talk about this, but they have to look like decades down the road to figure out how to invest these jillions of dollars to make it make sense. And I think they've run into a brick wall here in Colorado because of our I hate Colorado energy government that we have. It says Biden manipulated the oil reserve. I do worry about the oil reserve. I wish I knew how low it was and what that means for us. And then there's some links some folks have sent about Biden, fossil, I'll have to read that at some other point. This is our friend Alexa, drilling a well costs millions of dollars and generally takes several years. That's exactly what I was just saying. The revenue passes and expenses. Also, companies generally drill multiple wells at a time. When the president says he's getting rid of products using fossil fuels, that highly discourages oil and gas companies from making the investment to drill more wells. Yes, Biden's comments and policies have impacted more drilling being done on existing leases. There is something to that. This idea that they don't just spend $1 every day until things go bad, because they have to look down the road so far that when things are bad right now and look like they're going to be bad in the future, they have to start stopping right now to make sure they don't go belly up. Blah, blah. I can't. If the U.S. was in full production, the overall price would remain low. I do think that if we produced more, of course, we would have lower fuel prices. Here's another. How about greedy oil companies and their shareholders have a direct effect on prices? Greedy shareholders? Greedy oil companies? Maybe they are. I mean, what's the point of business, though? That's the thing, is that if I'm a shareholder in a company, I'm not investing in them because I think it's cool what they're doing. I want a return on my dollar. Otherwise, I would just donate the money rather than buy something that should hopefully increase with value or if it pays dividends.
Yeah, but we did, however, during the oil price spike, when Russia invaded Ukraine, we did directly see that the increase went into profit margins. And so what they did is they were afraid. It wasn't because the oil supply was constrained at that point. They thought that it could be because, again, oil is traded on the futures market. So it's a projection in the future as to how difficult it may be or may not be to get this oil. So the futures market spiked. And what we saw was, based on the price spike in the futures market, we saw oil and gas companies charging prices that were marginally above that increase. They profit took based on the back of you and I. When we were squeezing our budgets and reaching further into our pocket and having to make choices between food and fuel and energy in our homes, they took more profits from us. That's they had to show us because it's in their financial reports. It's in their financial disclosures. So that did happen. And now, again, we can agree or disagree and talk about whether or not they should be doing that. But before we say, well, isn't that the role and idea of business? Sure. But doesn't necessarily at that point in which we are undergoing a constraint for you and I in our economic budget every week, they took more money out of your pocket simply so they could make more money.
How did they get into my pocket?
By charging you money for gas. The amount of money that they charged you for oil and gas was above what the increase was on the market. They took more profit from you during that time, and it is in their financial disclosures. Yeah. It was shown.
You've already explained why they did that.
Yeah, because they wanted more money.
Okay. Well, in anticipation that the further constraint of whatever
you misunderstood me. The price of oil went up because of the future market got scared based on Russia's invasion in Ukraine. The price and increase of the gallon of gas and the price of the increase in the barrel of oil, what they had on the financial reports for all the big multinational oil companies was higher profits. Their profit margin increased. Now, what this means is, if you're charging me $100 for a barrel of oil on Monday and you're charging me $110 for a barrel of oil on Tuesday, the only way that I can, over that arc, make more money for a profit is to increase my price above $110 a barrel. That's what happened. They took extra profit on the back of us struggling to fill our tanks. That's what happened. Now, I'm not passing judgment on it. I'm just delivering the fact. That's what they did.
Yeah, I can't tell you the answer to that one. I don't know why they did what they did.
Because they wanted more money.
That
is the answer.
I know you're telling me that. But it's short of me just going, everything Billy says I agree with. I'd have to do my own looking to find out. I just know that I'm not in a position to do that right now. I don't know why they did what they did when it comes to that. I just know that's not the reason we're at north of $5 for gas.
Yeah, that's part of it. And we saw prices increase up to 20. Prices of oil went up over 25% while Trump was in office. So yes, OPEC did constrain price of oil. And Trump
We
went
should
in and did some
probably
deal with
we
that
should
as well.
probably get Dan Haley on from Colorado Oil and Gas Association. He'll tell us the straight scoop on what's going on. Let's see about. I don't know if he can be on today. I'll text him too during a break and see if he can't help us clear. By the way, no intention of ever going into a 25-minute discussion about gas, but as folks know that listen to the show, we don't really have any idea what's going to happen on the radio show until it's actually happened. It just sort of takes place this way. It's very organic. And not very oil and gassy, but there we are. We've got the oil and gas stuff right now, and we are not an oil and gas show, but that's the way it is right there. Let's do this. Let's cut away for a break. We still haven't come anywhere near the record, so I feel very comfortable with what we've done. It's very what's the window thing that they talk about, Billy, where the something window where that's very incremental and they keep opening this thing and pretty soon it's the something window. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I want to say Overton window, but I'm not sure if that's right.
Overton. That's Overton window. I think we've done that with the first segment, is that now 6:36 seems completely normal. Like, oh my gosh, we're in under the wire. When maybe 9-10 months ago, we'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe it's already 6:30. We've continued to push this thing through the Overton window. Listen, stick around. We're going to come back. We're going to do the really smart stuff. That's the stuff in the news, the actual legitimate news, less opinion, more fact in this next segment. That's called the Thorpe Report. And then I don't know how to describe the last segment. I think the only way to do it is to give it its appropriate title, which is You Choose the News. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It is that time for the local news, the legitimate local news through the Thorpe Report. William.
Hey, good morning, sir. Now we got a cold front you were talking about. It's going to slide across Colorado today. Some cooler weather is going to be in town for a couple of days, at least through Wednesday and Thursday. Going to be a gorgeous end of the week, though. Highs in the low 70s. Plenty of sunshine on Friday. Temperatures climbing into the upper 70s and 80 degrees over the weekend. Also, because of some of our colder temperatures, you got to get up the next couple of weekends to go see the aspen turning if you want to go see the leaves, because the season is going to be a little bit shorter from what I'm reading so far. Denver Police Department said that they're asking for the public's help in their investigation in the murder last month of 16-year-old Joshua Mahanis. The teen was found dead September 26th in the 1600 block of South Julian Way near West Mexico Avenue in Denver. That's in the Sanderson Gulch area. Anybody who have information about the homicide is actually called the Metro Denver Crime Stoppers. Elsewhere, we had a man that was shot and killed by officers Sunday night after what Westminster police said was a confrontation at an apartment complex. The shooting happened at the Skyview Apartments. That's West 116th Avenue and Navajo Street. They'd been called the man's apartment 5 times since Friday for noise disturbances. He did not answer the door to talk with officers at any of those times. Then around 3:45 in the afternoon on Sunday, they responded with a mental health responder. Man did not answer the door again. Or answer the phone to speak with a co-responder. Officers were called back to the apartment at 8 o'clock that same evening. Police said residents reported the man was throwing things from the balcony and damaging vehicles parked below. At that point, when officers arrived, they found the man being held down by several residents. Officer tried using a stun gun on the man. It was not effective. That is when the suspect pulled out a handgun as he was fighting with one of the residents and was shot by an officer. Officer started life-saving measures before the man was taken to the hospital, and he later died.
Dang.
Yeah. Denver City Council members yesterday rejected a $6.4 million 3-year contract with the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, following a request by Mayor Mike Johnston to do so, saying the administration needs more time to develop a strong and fair agreement. Contract was meant for the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless to partner with the Department of Housing Stability until the end of 2026. And overwhelmed by the recent surge of migrants, Denver reached out to the governor to ask for support from the Colorado National Guard. That ask was made last week. Colorado did deny the request, though. State spokesman said because there's no mechanism to call the National Guard without a declared state of emergency. Instead,
who asked for it?
The Mayor Mike Johnston, I believe. Yeah, Denver. Yep.
Asked for the National Guard?
Yeah, for help with the migrant population. And Polis instead sent 40 civilian staff members to help process new migrant arrivals. They added Polis is not considering a state of emergency at this time. They're saying, though, the rise of migrants is unlike anything the city has seen since it began tracking the arrivals. According to a release, adult migrant guests without children are in shelter facilities for 14 to 21 days. Families with children are allowed to stay for 37 days. To date, Denver served more than 21,000 migrants at a cost of $26 million.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah. So
where are they all coming from?
Don't know. Daily,
that's right. We know.
Daily new average is about 300 people. Total migrant shelter population now at around 2,500 is what we've got so far. And those numbers dropped sharply from even mid-September when the daily average was 125.
Billy, you read these things way more than I do. Did they say, are these people that are here like this is a way station and they're going off to other parts of the country? Or
a little of both. A little of both. Some looking to stay here, some looking to transition and continue to go elsewhere in the country. Basically, that's part of why they want to get some of them, into process with systems, because to try to connect them with resources, so they're not just out there wandering around trying to find, ways to make it. Because if they can connect with employment and housing opportunities, that will help them stay away from, I don't know, the crime. Because maybe it's just me. But if I was a new migrant and I was legal or illegal inside of a city, and let's say I'm even waiting, I came in illegally and I'm waiting because I've claimed asylum for whatever reason, it could even be BS. But if I can't get access in that new country to employment and housing, the choice I'm going to have to make to feed myself or anything else is going to be crime. So that's the thing that's worrying about me, is that if we don't get them connected with services, and I'm not talking about government services, there are a lot of NGOs that do this as well, and they should be stepping in. And that's what I'm worried about. 300 people a day. That's not good. That's more than double, man.
Yeah. That's just a ton.
Yeah. And again, mid-September, we had an average of 125 a day and 1,200 in shelters at the time. So we've doubled both of those in just a few weeks. Not good.
This can't help the whole mini home, not at all.
No, not at all. Because they can't build them fast enough. How do you possibly get? Yeah, I don't know. Denver is expecting a record number of eviction filings this year, coupled with a decrease in rental assistance available. And some people are saying it could cause a crisis. In a budget presentation last week, the city said it was on track for a record 12,000 eviction filings in 2023, breaking the previous record of just over 10,000 in 2010, which was during the recession. Around 75,000 Kaiser Permanente employees are potentially taking part in the largest healthcare strike in history on Wednesday. It's a collection of 8 unions representing them, and they haven't struck an agreement with the company before their contracts ran out on Saturday. So they're looking at whether or not they're going to strike. And that's all I got.
Interesting
Yeah,
stuff.
that
And
could be really
this is all the good local stuff, man.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is that
Yeah.
maybe we'll do this later in the show. I'd love to talk about Gavin Newsom's appointment into the U.S. Senate.
Yeah,
there's
that's
a lot
an
of
interesting
fascinating aspect.
That's a weird one.
Maybe we do that. Maybe we start talking about that in the 7. Fascinating decision making that was there. A lot going on in that decision. If folks haven't done it, you can always Google it before we get there. Spoiler alert: she doesn't live in California, so that's always a
surprise.
She has a home there, but doesn't live there. That was always an interesting thing when your new senator.
Yeah.
Doesn't actually live where you are, but
Yeah.
we'll talk about that in the 7. Look, let's do this. Let's cut away for a break. Try to get what time we can. Billy's going to do his magic to give us enough time to do the good stuff in the 6 o'clock hour. That's the You Choose the News. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Little Allison Chains right here, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you, turning it over to the big man for what we can do with the last few minutes of You Choose the News.
Yes, it is that time of the morning again with Mark Anderson in the background. We are playing everybody's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. Yes, we have got really stupid stories that we have scoured the internet for, giving them ridiculous headlines to play this fake radio news game because nobody in charge knows we're doing it. So we'd appreciate if you keep it a secret. All righty, so here are your headlines this morning. Headline number 1, refund from an airline. Headline number 2, Police are responsible for law enforcement, not me. Headline number 3, making family fun night funner. And headline number 4, you're doing it wrong, hygiene edition. Alrighty, headlines 1 again are refund from an airline.
Oh, listen, no, you're doing it wrong, hygiene edition.
All right.
Let's get it on.
You're doing it wrong, hygiene edition. Here, we need to meet Mary Further, or as she goes by her online name, Madam Sweet, on TikTok. She recently shared a lot of tips about your personal hygiene, not mine, yours. She said that, well, you may be washing your armpits incorrectly. She said if you're not doing it the proper way, you're not getting rid of that antiperspirant or deodorant from the day before. She said if you're using that silly Tutti Frutti soap and just going on your armpits, not enough. She goes, you got to get in there deep and really scrub, especially if you have the hairy pits. She said deodorant and antiperspirant will stick on those, so you've really got to spend about 20 to 30 seconds lathering your pits in order to get them clean. All right, something to do in the shower this morning while you're having some
shower?
Yeah. No, it's a foreign word for you. No, okay.
You're gonna have to show me.
Next question. Oh, there was something I could say there. That's no. That I guess it's so much fun.
I just verb.
Yeah. Okay.
Withdrawn.
Refund from an airline. Police are responsible for law enforcement, not me, or making family fun night funner.
Making family night.
Sarah.
That one, the funner one.
Teacher Sarah Jane Duncan is 35 years old, and she decided recently as an elementary school teacher, she was going to make family fun night at Helfrich Park STEM Academy much more funner. With what? Meth. Yes, she brought meth to family fun night. Now, how did they find it? Well, she was taking some pictures with some kids, and she took her scrunchie off of her hair and laid it down next to her. She forgot her scrunchie as she wandered away. Little children came over and said, hey, I found the teacher's scrunchie. This is a little more heavy than it should be. They undid the zipper in the scrunchie, and that's when they found the meth.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, now she was brought in for not 1, but 2 different urinalyses, and those have been inconclusive. They're giving her another drug test, and they're going through some discipline actions. But, yeah, she wanted to make it much more funner. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I love that story. Meth
ridiculous.
Does make... I've heard this. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. I've heard it makes it much more
fun. But I've heard.
Yeah, but also absence of teeths. Yeah, your toofuses fall out. So,
there's
you win
that
some, you
personal
lose some.
hygiene one.
Yeah, exactly. All right, final choice. A refund from an airline or police are responsible for law enforcement, not me.
I've never seen one, so refund from an airline.
Refund from an airline. This is a really weird one. Gill and Warren Press said they've received almost $1,400 in a refund from Singapore Airline because of a stinky pooch. Yeah, they were on a plane ride. They were on a plane ride from Paris to Singapore, and they were in premium economy, which really just sounds like a stupid name.
It does.
Yeah.
Sounds like extra medium.
Exactly. So they were sitting next to a guy that had a emotional support animal. And evidently the animal, not so well behaved, slobbered a lot, got on Gill's legs, and he said, ew, it was disgusting. And then the dog was a wee bit flatulent. And they said they had to spend the entire flight going from Paris to Singapore with a dog sitting next to him going,
no.
Yeah, they said it was absolutely awful. So they started to complain to the airline. Now, this is, you're going to find it familiar. At first, the airline said, oh, we feel so bad. How about we give you $73? And they said, how about no?
How did they come up with 73?
I don't know. Because after that, then they offered them travel vouchers worth $118. And they said again, no. So eventually they got it all the way up to $1,400. So I'm telling you, sir, there is hope for you. You still can get that refund. Fight the man. All right, that's it. It's you got 15
Buddy,
seconds.
that's all we got. We're going to come back. Let's do that Gavin Newsom thing. I'm anxious to talk about that and see what people think about who represents them at the state and federal level here. George Brauchler, 710, KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's hour 2 of 4. We're going to be taken over by the big guy, Chuck Kirk. He is taller than I am. I saw him a week or so ago during that Oregon bloodletting that took place. He's a tall dude. He's got to be north of 6'1", 6'2". Jeff Hunt and I were there together, and the gap between Charlie Kirk and me and Jeff was similar to the gap between me and Jeff's son. Just to give you an example that maybe, I don't know, highlights it. He takes over at 10. Then we go Dennis Prager at 11. We go Seb Gorka. He may also be tall. You know, Dennis Prager's tall. If you went to that cigar night, that dude is also way taller than I. Maybe that's the thing, to be a national. How tall is Hugh? He's not that tall. Hugh Hewitt's not very tall. I don't think Gallagher's very tall either. And Levin, okay, maybe it's not a tall guy thing. I was starting to worry that I didn't have the height to ever make it to the national level. Then we go Seb Gorka 1 to 3. Then Deb Flora back in the saddle right here, live and local, 3 to 4. And then continuing a decades-long swan song, Stephen Tubbs from 4 to 7. Get him while you can. You're running out of days and shows that you can pillory. I mean, question gently, Stephen. For all those things that you've always wanted to know about Stephen, this show from 4 to 7 is the way to do it. And I'll give you the number. It's 303-696-1971. You can pre-program it into your phone. You may remember that last week, Dianne Feinstein, at age 90, longest serving member of the Senate, I think from California, certainly the first woman senator from California, first woman mayor of San Francisco, a lot of firsts, passed away. And I don't know if this is a first, but it feels like it. Gavin Newsom made an appointment, which he is entitled, in fact, obligated to do as governor. Now, you may recall that happened here as well in the not too distant past. We had a guy named Ken Salazar, who I think it was Ken, who was a U.S. Senator, but then he became Obama's Secretary of the Interior. And if that's wrong, Billy, you have to jump in and correct me because I'm not that bright. Secretary of the Interior, that left a vacancy to be filled. And then Governor Ritter had a couple choices to make. One was a guy named Hickenlooper, who was the mayor of Denver. And one was a guy named Michael Bennett, who had just been, he'd been Philip Anschutz's counsel. He'd also been super rich guy. And he had been, I want to say, the head of Denver Public Schools, or at least counsel for them or something. Anyway, Ritter ends up alienating Hickenlooper by picking Michael Bennett, who has gone on to serve for the last 70 years or something like that. Interestingly, though, both of those guys, Hickenlooper and Bennett, were living in Colorado. That's what makes the decision by Gavin Newsom. That's one of many things that make it very interesting. And Billy, forgive me, were you able to find any sound of that in that last second when I was like, Billy, do you have any sound? You got some. Hell, is it the announcement?
It's him talking to reporters after the announcement. So a little bit of both.
I'll describe the announcement then. There's a woman named LaFonza Butler. She is the president of Emily's List. Now, Emily's List is an uber progressive lefty group that specifically supports with contributions women Democrat candidates. In fact, Emily stands for early money increases, something yeast and all that other stuff. The idea that if you get early money in, you can make a bigger difference than if the money shows up late in any sort of a campaign. And they're right about that. Big money early makes a big difference. And so she's the head of Emily's List. She's also got significant connections to SEIU, the big time labor union. In fact, her wife, whose name escapes me at the moment, is also a big time executive in SEIU. In fact, let me see if I can find that thing. Boy, I'm screwing this whole thing up right here because I can't find her wife's. Here it is, Neneki Lee. And if I'm saying that wrong, forgive me. Neneki Lee. Neneki Lee, she is the National Division Director for Public Services at SEIU. So you've got two incredible lefty organizations represented here. And the common denominator is that they're now going to have a voice in the United States Senate. You'll remember that Gavin Newsom had pledged, much like Joe Biden did at the time of the last vacancy on the Supreme Court, he was only going to consider a black woman, an African-American woman, to serve as the United States Senator, and really as a placeholder, because there was already going to be a pitch battle. Barbara Lee, who's out there, a congresswoman out in California, who's also, by the way, African-American, and Katie Porter and Adam Schiff. Those are some of the big names we talked about. Well, true to his word, he appointed an African-American woman. It's this LaFonza Butler. But LaFonza doesn't live in California. She lives in Maryland. That's right. She owns a house in California, but she's not a California voter. She's not a California resident. And by the time she sticks up her hand to become United States Senator from California, she will have only then registered to vote in the state of California, just to serve as United States Senator for the remaining portion of Dianne Feinstein's term. Billy, you got sound. What did the big man Newsom say?
There was no decision made. There was nothing predetermined here. There's no script here. This was not going to happen. That's why I kind of pushed back on all this speculation and with grace, I walked into it as well, obviously, by saying they want to get in the middle of. She's the only choice. She was outstanding. She's the best choice. And I could not be more blessed that I was able to make it.
You didn't ask anybody else?
Come on. I am proud and honored to have had so many extraordinarily qualified people that expressed interest in this job. And I was able to engage them in conversations, period, full stop. And I could not be more proud of LaFonza's interest in her qualifications and her willingness to do this.
Now, there are 3 constitutionally mandated qualifications, the floor below which you cannot fall if you're going to be United States Senator. One is you have to be at least 30 years of age. One is that you have to be a United States citizen for at least 9 years. And then the final one is that you have to be a resident of the state that you're going to be a senator in at the time that you serve. This effort by Gavin Newsom seems to me to put that thing on its head, right? Like to spin that in a way that residency is almost irrelevant. And I wonder if that isn't the point. And I wonder, for him, it's, hey, I want to put someone in place who isn't going to end up deciding midterm to run because she has no base in California. Now, LaFonza's statement afterwards was, I'm honored to represent a state that I have made my home. Now, I don't know if that's made my home in the past tense, because it feels like it's past tense wording. But since she's not registered to vote in California, it is not by definition her home. It's not her place of residence. And so what do we do with this? You know where else we saw this? Hillary Clinton. Do you remember that? Hillary Clinton was the first lady of Arkansas for years when her then 15-year-old husband, Bill Clinton, became governor after his stint as attorney general in middle school. And she had only lived really in Arkansas during that entire time. And she all of a sudden announces that she is going to run for the United States Senate out of New York. This is back in the day. And I remember even at that time feeling offended, and I'm not a New Yorker. I was born in New York City, but I'm not a New Yorker. Offended at the idea that someone could just decide, I want to represent this place, so I move there as a vehicle to run for office. When the whole purpose of representative government is that you've got someone that's known in the community, they've lived in the community, they've been impacted by the special, unique things that take place in that community, and they're bringing that perspective on behalf of that community to whatever body they represent. And that whole thing spun it on its head when Hillary Clinton did that. And I thought, listen, if Ronald Reagan came back from the dead and announced, I want to run for United States Senate from the state of Colorado. And again, there's obviously no chance a Republican gets elected in the next couple cycles here, at least. I would not vote for him. I would not vote for him. If Donald Trump became a free agent, decides not to run for president, but wants to run for the United States Senate, and said, I'm gonna pick Colorado, I wouldn't vote for him, because you're not from here, don't live here. And the fact that you move here is irrelevant to everything except the Constitution, whose point is that you got to be a member of the community. You've got to be a member of this place if you're going to represent their interests. And now we have Gavin Newsom, in essence, saying it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I need an ideological win for me. And as I position myself nationally, and think about the genius of this, Emily's List is a juggernaut of a fundraiser. And while they would never come out and endorse a dude, having their connections to help gin up money for a guy that could end up running for office, God knows what happens to President Biden or anyone else, having that kind of leverage helps. Here's what hurts a little bit, though. This woman from Emily's List was also big on Kamala Harris's 2020 presidential run. So she's a buddy of the vice president's. The other thing is the SEIU connection. As Biden has demonstrated, and frankly, Trump a little bit too, courting favor with unions matters when it comes to elections. They are these giant organizations who have special rules for them that allow them to take money from employees and funnel them to the ideological causes and candidates of their choosing. So he's now picked someone who is not only big in the SEIU organization, but whose wife is huge in the SEIU organization. Politically, it's pretty smart, I think, for Gavin Newsom. And don't believe anybody that says, hey, it's very controversial and people are upset he didn't pick Barbara Lee. That's dumb. That's inside California politics. Newsom doesn't care about inside California. He cares about the nation, his chances at the national level. And in doing this, has said, residency doesn't matter. Being from the community doesn't matter. What matters is ideology. And I just wonder, would we tolerate that anywhere else? I'll give you another example. Back in 2022, before Ed Perlmutter made the decision to step down, it had been widely rumored that he wasn't going to run. Kind of rumors like you hear about Ken Buck now, although I'm not convinced Ken's leaving, at least yet. There was an organization, a big national organization, Republicans reached out to me and said, hey, we'd like to meet with you. We'd love to talk with you about running for Congress in the 7th Congressional District. And I said, well, I don't live in the 7th Congressional District. And they're like, yeah, but you did. I said, yeah, I did. I mean, I grew up in Lakewood. That's the 7th CD. That's Ed Perlmutter country for sure. And they said, well, you could rent a place there. And then after you win, you could move in there. And I said, that's just not me, man. That is not how I view politics. That is not how I view representation. And there was a gentle, respectful debate about, well, dude, you have more claim to Jefferson County than some of the people running because you lived there longer and your family still lives there. My dad, my sister, and for a time there, my brother did as well. My nephew's there. That's all true, but that's not what representation is about. And so I just very, very flattered that anyone would even consider me. And I'm sure I was on a list of about 100 people they were going through. And I just said, I don't live there. I'm not moving into any place to run for office. That is crazy. That's just not what we want out of politics. In fact, part of the problem here is we've developed a system where victory, and we heard this the other day, and to some extent this is true. Jeff said this, for state chairman, your goal must be victory. He's right. For the state party chairman, your goal must be victory. But if the idea here is that we only care about wins at the community level so much, we don't care if you're part of the community, as long as you're willing to come live here. If you can win, like if John Elway, who I presume is a Republican, right? I'm just presuming that. If he wanted to run for Congress and said, you know what, I'm moving up into the 8th congressional district. And I don't think he'd ever do that. We should reject him for that. We should disparage him for that. Because there is no, in my opinion, no room in Congress for people who are just carpetbagging their way to elected office. And in this particular case, even though she's not running, it sort of suggests that where you live is not as important as your politics. We have, this idea that all politics is local. That was the old Tip O'Neill. Maybe not. Maybe now all politics is national and ideological, and where you come from just isn't a big deal. I'm just interested to know, would you support, and who would you support running for an elected office where you live that didn't live there before they ran for office? 303-696-1971. So I got some text from people about that 7th CD thing. I knew you were almost in. Here's one. Questioning Newsom's decision is racist and homophobic. That's a great point, because apparently LaFonda Butler is African-American because she had to be in order to be a United States Senator from California, according to the governor. And she is part of the LGBTQ community as well. Here's one. When Gabe Evans is excited to get elected because his wife and kids can go out to DC with him, we should be electing someone else whose family is going to still live in Colorado. That's a tough one. And I don't think that's the same thing. I do worry about folks running for Congress, getting elected, and then forgetting where they're from. But when you are married and you have small kids, I'm not sure I'm down with the idea that you leave all them back behind here while you go spend every week for a certain number of weeks away from them. It might actually be better from a representative standpoint to have that constant reminder of your family in DC with you. Going through the struggles of trying to raise a family, but understanding too that the Colorado that you're making directly impacts them. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, on the one hand, you have the rumors that Michael Bennett's in DC way more than he's in Colorado. That's a horrible model. But I don't know that it bothers me at all that Gabe wants his kids with him and his wife with him while he's out in Congress. That to me seems like what you'd want. But I also get the idea that people become swamp creatures. I don't see that, by the way, with Gabe. I don't see that with Scott James either. Those two dudes don't strike me as the guys that are going to fall victim to that kind of stuff. I'm not worried about that. Here's one. J.D. Vance moved back to Ohio to run. Well, okay. What I don't know is how long had J.D. Vance lived in Ohio? If the dude grew up in Ohio, moved away for a handful of years and moved, that doesn't bother me. If the kid moved out of Ohio when he was 12 and returned in his 40s to run, then I do feel like that's carpetbagging. Another text, nope, Coloradans need to have representation that comes back every weekend. I agree. I want them to come back every weekend too. Here's one. KJP has done so well, so I'm sure this will work out. Oh, I'm sure that's a joke. That's our buddy. Billy, help him not to make a fool of himself. I think people are asking you, Billy, to save me from myself. I don't know. That doesn't seem very very doable. You don't have those kinds of superpowers. MIT lives in California, but is senator from Utah. Is MIT, who's MIT? Oh, Mitt. Because you put it in all caps, I'm like, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Mitt lives in California, but is a senator from Utah. If that's true, I'm appalled. And it shouldn't actually I don't think it should actually take place. Here's when I knew Joey could do it. From a total 46 presidents, Joe Biden is rated as the 5th best. The Polling Public Relations Office released this statement. After 3 years in office, Americans have rated President Biden the 5th best president ever. These are the details. Trump, Lincoln, and Reagan tied for first. 23 presidents tied for second. 17 for third. Jimmy Carter came in fourth. Barack and Joe for fifth. That's very funny. Exactly why I changed the station. Not looking for my emotions to... What is this?
Oh, that's probably someone I
this is
responded to, honestly.
Billy, this must be one you responded to.
Yeah, it was
somebody.
Someone was just talking about they weren't happy with some of the language I was using in the first hour, and I just wrote back to them saying, well, that you had said this, you described something as feeling, and I said no, but I was talking about the facts, and then I just pointed out that sometimes the language that I use and the sentence structure that I choose is designed to elicit an emotional response. That's what I do in music radio as well, is to connect with people.
Whether that's true or not, you're good at it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's intentional or not, but you've got the skill set.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
So that is specific. And the person was mad about the idea that I had said the people that are looking at the gas pump and not realizing the causes are stupid, and I can't fix that. And did I choose that
word? You did say that.
Yeah, absolutely. Did I choose that word specifically? Yes. Did I choose it to make an emotional response and to kind of like sit there and ding the people going, wait a minute, is he calling me stupid? Is this reaction? Yeah, I did it to engage you in the conversation. Yep. It's exactly the reason I chose it. Yeah, did it on purpose. There is,
so some of these text folks, and I read them. You text in, I read them. You call in, you get on the phone, we have a conversation about this. Would you support anyone running for office who moved into a Republican or Democrat, right? That moved into a district simply to run for that office? 303-696-1971. I wouldn't. And it wouldn't matter to me if I thought they could win. I just don't believe in that. Do you know where else we see that? And I've mentioned this on the radio before, folks. Judges. You have people now who are being sent to the governor's desk, one of three. I've told you about the process before. You go through this judicial nominating commission. They usually interview 10-ish. If there's that many qualified candidates, they send 3 names to the governor. Governor picks one. They become a judge as soon as they're sworn in. There are now people that are applying from all over the metro area and different parts of the state for the places they want to live and basically throwing their hat in the ring to be judges. These judicial nominating commissions have lost track of the idea of what a judge is supposed to do. A judge isn't just someone you plug and play in across the state, maybe at the senior judge level when you need a fill in for a short period of time. But you've got these judicial nominating commissions. That's you and me doing this. Sending people to the governor's desk who don't even live where they do, who are saying, well, if you make me a judge, I'll move there. Hard pass. Unless it's a community that can't generate enough qualified candidates to be judge, never, ever, never would I put someone forward to become a judge in a community they don't already live in and haven't lived in for a while. How can you do? What's the point of having judges who are supposedly living in the community? What's the point of it? Why not just do away with that requirement and say, you can all come from Denver? And that's what we're seeing. People that live in Denver becoming judges in Adams, people in Arapahoe applying to be judges in Jeffco. You can apply all you want, but getting sent to the governor's desk, it's crazy, but it's this entire idea that representative government is on the ropes. We no longer care about the idea that you're from us or you're one of us. All we care about is, do you wear the jersey? And if you wear the jersey, we'll take you. And so now California, largest state in the country, 4th largest economy on the planet. I think it's 4th. It could be 5th. I don't know. They're going to have someone representing them in the United States Senate who does not live there and can't vote there. As of today, they're saying she may register to vote as early as today because the Senate's going to reconvene this evening and they'd like her to be a participant in it. So a non-California resident about to represent the state of California. And if you're a Democrat, you should be embarrassed. People should be reaching out and throwing punches at Gavin Newsom, not because he promised to only appoint an African-American woman. That's bonkers and racist on its own. But because he chose someone who doesn't live in California. She owns a house in California. First off, how elitist is that? Lives in Maryland, owns another house in California. That's just like you and me, folks. How many people here listening have multiple homes in multiple states? I know Billy has several, but he's earned those through the snake trade. That doesn't just happen. That's through a career of snake trading. But I don't. I've been busting my ass for decades here. I don't have enough money to own a second home anywhere, let alone outside the state. These two do. She and her wife do. And now they're going to represent California. Does it matter anymore? Does residency matter? Do you care more about whether they represent your community or whether or not they agree with you ideologically? Purity, 303-696-1971. Give us a call. I'm going to cut away for a break here. We're going to do just a teeny tiny little bit of business because, well, that's just what we have to do. I'm going to tell you about a guy named Dan Caplis. Dan and Bobber want you to know something, that all the firms out there that do all the big talk, and they talk as well. Don't get me wrong. They do big talk. There's a big difference, and that is they have the walk to back it up. That all the other folks out there that put people on TV to tell you how much money that they've gotten for victims of negligence and recklessness and intentional conduct, all the people that advertise on the trains and the buses and the park benches and all that other stuff, that's all it is. It's advertising. And when Dan comes on, and I'm telling you, Dan does it differently. The reason Dan has live reads, and I'm honored to do it for him, is I think in part with me, I can tell you about Dan and Bobber because I've actually done cases with Dan and Bobber. This isn't just about, hey, some guy shows up and says, I'll scratch a check to the station. I worked for Dan 16, 17 years ago. I learned to try civil cases under Dan. I know what this guy brings to the table, not just in terms of expertise and skills, but in terms of character and commitment to his clients. Same thing with Bobber. I tried Bobber's first case. So when I tell you that if you're in trouble, you get hurt, you've got some life-changing injury that's the fault of someone else, there's only one place to go. You pick up the call and you dial 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or you check them out at dancaplis.law.com. That's Dan Caplis, Caplis law.com. Folks, I would love, by the way, as soon as I'm talking about trial work and I'm thinking about Dan and Bobber, I'm thinking, dang it, there's the big trial going on out in Colorado, the Elijah McClain case. I didn't update you on what I saw Friday and yesterday, folks, between the driving in New Jersey after the show and doing the presentation to all of these law folks, including the DA out here. By the time I got done with everything, it was too late. I couldn't get back on to listen. So I can't tell you what happened in court yesterday, but I'm going to try to tune in a little bit today when the show is over, and I'll give you that update. But it still progresses. It's just slow. It's just very slow. Stick around. We're going to get to your calls, your texts. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy.
It's me, George Brauchler, just a small town girl living in this lonely world on 710 KNUS, going right to the phone lines. Marcus, you're on 710. What do you think?
Yeah, George, I agree with you 100%. You know, when we look at our counties and everything, the police officers have to live there, the fire department. And when we elect judges, those are in our county. And we can't vote in Denver. If somebody goes to Denver to be a judge or something, we can't vote for that. So it makes no sense.
It's one quick clarification. The residency requirement you're talking about for police and fire largely was done away with some time ago. Like Denver used to have to live in Denver, and that's why you saw up there in Grant Ranch that kind of what they colloquially called a blue ghetto, because cops tried to move as far away from Denver as they could without leaving the confines of Denver. Well, that rule got done away with. And so, you know, the electeds have to live there. I'm not even sure the chief of police in a city has to live in the city. I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think that that's true. But elected folks do. Sheriffs, DAs, all that other stuff have to live in the jurisdiction. The judges have to at the time that they take the robe and take the bench. But I think that we just don't seem to care anymore, pay any attention. Does it matter, man? I mean, and I'll ask it in this way. I'll play the devil's advocate. So somebody lives in Arapahoe County, just over the border from Douglas. Does it matter if they live in Douglas to be able to adequately represent the law to Douglas County residents? If they just live, 5 miles away outside the county, does it matter?
I think it does to me, because the sales taxes and the people, you're part of that community. And you get along with your neighbors, Douglas and everything. But to me, it means more that you're part of the community than if you got to live someplace else. I can understand costs and everything, but I think it's better to just live within the community.
I agree with you. And I don't mean just while they serve. That piece may have some accountability to it. But if the only point is we need people geographically dispersed at the time that they serve, there doesn't have to be any other additional commitment, then maybe we ought to rethink the idea of residency. Does it really matter at all? Some folks have been texting in talking about, hey, these people have moved into this jurisdiction for this purpose. I don't know the answer to that, but we should have that conversation. I think this should be in every campaign. I presume it is. When you run for office, you should have to tell voters, I have lived here for X number of years. Or in the case of LaFonda Butler, I have lived here for X number of minutes. And I'm going to represent you in the U.S. Senate. You're
100% right.
Yeah, well, and something else, Marcus, you may not know about with the judge thing, is we're going to have this brand new 23rd Judicial District. It's going to be live, I think, January of 2025. So there'll be an election in November of 2024 for the new district attorney. That's Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties. Arapahoe is going to remain the 18th. It will go from the largest jurisdiction in the state to a combination of the third, that's Arapahoe, and the seventh-ish, which is Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln. At the time that they were crafting the legislation to make this happen, I was asked by some folks who were helping to draft the legislation if I thought it would be supportable and appropriate if the judges who are currently in the 18th Judicial District were all grandfathered in to remain as judges, even if they didn't live in the counties that they were ultimately apportioned into. So if you were an 18th Judicial District judge and you lived in Arapahoe, could you still be a Douglas County judge in the new 23rd? And I said, absolutely not, Marcus, for the reason you did. I said, absolutely not. If you don't want to live among us, you simply can't represent us, not even at the law level.
I feel that, because that's our community. And and every county is different, but we work hand in hand. But you got to live in a community, so the people and everything. So, I believe like you do, George. That's just my opinion.
Marcus, let me ask you, how long have you lived in the county you're in right now? Which county are you in?
I'm in Arapahoe. I used to live in Denver, and it used to be nice, and then it just got so bad. There was only two places I'd like to go. Lakewood or Arapahoe. And Adams is nice too. So Denver got so bad that I had to leave. So
how long have you been in Arapahoe?
I've been in Arapahoe now 15 years.
Okay, that's a ton of time, man. If you wanted to run for office, or if someone like you ran for office and you were like, oh my gosh, you've lived here 15 years, you're good. What's that cutoff for you? Like, how long in your mind should someone have to live in your, whatever the jurisdiction is they're running for you to be like, you're one of us, you get it?
I'd say at least 2 years. Year and a half to 2 years.
Is pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. You've been here a year and a half and 2 years, and you're in the community, that's more than fair.
You've been driving the roads, you've been shopping the shops, you've been paying the taxes, 2 years sounds reasonable to me. Now, I don't know if I would ever say that had to be a legal requirement, but 2 makes some sense to me.
No. Yeah.
2 makes some sense to me. Can you,
Because
Marcus, last question, can you think of a good reason to vote for someone who has lived in the jurisdiction that they're going to represent for less than a year? Can you think of a reason why you would vote for someone like that?
I really couldn't, because they haven't been here long enough, and they really want to know the community and the way the county and people think, because every county is different. You know that, George. It takes a little time. So you just can't come in and everything, because you could East Coast and West and Midwest, everybody's different. And so I don't know how they're going to pull that off. But no, you got to live there for a while.
Yeah, I get it. Hey, Marcus, great call. Thanks for getting us started off. Marcus's line is open at 303-696-1971. I agree. I agree with that. Here's some other folks texting in. Agree with the caller. Maybe it depends on the level of government. I want my city council, school board candidates, and state and federal representatives to live in my community or district. It's hard to get police officers and teachers in small towns. So that part is real too. Those small towns, I get it. You couldn't really do a good residency requirement, but when you get rural enough, de facto, you have to have a residency requirement because you can't commute in from anywhere else. Now, I know that there are certain jurisdictions, maybe on the east, southeast part of the state, where they've had folks that have served in DA's offices across county lines or across district lines just because of the need and the lack of prosecutors there. Okay, I get that. In a community like that, as long as the voters know, I understand. But in the metro area, how can you possibly justify supporting someone who has lived in the jurisdiction for less than the period of time that Marcus talked about, which was 2 years, which I think Marcus just made it up on the fly. That's a good number, 2 years. How do you justify someone like that going to represent you on other issues and to use the authority that you give them through your, I just don't get it. And now you have the governor of the state of California appointing someone to be United States Senator. That's 1% of the United States Senate, by the way. From someone who lives in Maryland. I want you to think about this too. Lives in Maryland. If you've seen a picture of Washington, D.C., it is carved out of Maryland and Virginia. Do you for a moment think that this person is going to pick up and move their life into the home they own, the house they own in California? Or do you think they're going to simply fill out a piece of paper that says, I want to be a California resident now, even though I don't live there? and they're just going to maintain their current address in Maryland, where they ran Emily's List, where their wife runs some policy portion of SEIU. That's all that's happening. This woman's life in terms of coming and going from work doesn't change at all, coming and going to her home. It's the same house. She's going to continue to live in the house she's in right now. She's just going to do it as a United States Senator from the state of California. Isn't that embarrassing? Isn't that embarrassing? And if you're a Californian, aren't you embarrassed, Democrat or not? Aren't you like, what are you doing, man? Is there nobody here in California good enough to represent us here in California? I don't know the answer. 303-696-1971. I want to give you a heads up, by the way, as we continue to work through this 8 o'clock hour. We're supposed to be joined by D. Will. He is the chair of the state GOP. I want to get his sense of what took place on Saturday. I know, based on some of the statements I've read, he is optimistic that even though they came up short, that it is going to facilitate a better argument for the lawsuit. I'm anxious to hear about that. We'll get caught up on all the other good stuff, the fundraising, the organizational piece, and what we look like heading into 2024. So if you've got questions, by the way, for Dave Williams, you can definitely text them in. You know how to do that off the app. Once again, I don't think we asked Billy if Dave would take questions from callers. Maybe float that to him when he calls in, Billy, at the 8 o'clock hour. Listen, I've got a bunch of other texts that are coming in here. I want to get to those, but why don't we do this? Let's cut away for a break. Give phone lines a chance to light up there at 303-696-1971. And before I cut away, I'll just quickly tell you about Mitch Floria from the Art of Granite. Mitch is the guy that makes the house more beautiful. I've been seriously considering the basement and what to do about the basement. And many times the basements that I see, sometimes in these brand new builds, sometimes in friends' houses where they finished the basement, that thing they put in there that kind of makes it special is not the 85-inch TV, which, by the way, is awesome. But nearby is that little wet bar area, with the little fridge and all that stuff. And you can do the food preparation and set up the drinks and sit around and just catch up with friends and neighbors and whatnot. Mitch does that. He doesn't just do the giant kitchen countertop things, which he does brilliantly in the bathroom. He'll also do that for any room that calls for awesome craftsmanship in the countertop world. Now, it's called the Art of Granite. Don't be deceived. It's the Art of Granite and quartz and marble and all those other things. But that name, I think, was already taken. So he's just had to go with theartofgranite.com. You can check him out on the web, but I suggest going out to his showroom, conveniently located out there at about, 6th Avenue and Colfax area over there, or give him a call, 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919. Stick around. We'll come back to wrap up this hour. David Williams at the top of the next, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Not a ton of time left. Frank and the other callers, and I think Billy probably talked to you off air. I just don't want to throw someone on to give them just the 1 minute, which if we were ending the show, I'd do. I just hate cheating people out of the time to have a conversation. That's my favorite part of the show. Listen, we're supposed to have David Williams. He is the big man from the state GOP here in the 8 o'clock hour. If you've got questions, text him in. Billy will check and see if Dave has time to answer questions. It's never a matter of willingness. Guy's always willing to answer the questions. It's just sometimes his schedule is so tough, as you can imagine. We only get him for the one segment. I've got my own questions, but I'm anxious to hear how Saturday may impact the future and sort of some of the rule change stuff that we heard from Sherry Pike yesterday. I'm anxious to hear about the impact of that, how it went down procedurally, and then, of course, the normal questions about, hey, where are we today? How are we doing with the fundraising? How are we doing with candidate recruitment? What's the next step? And are we going to be able to take back some of these seats on our way towards winning the presidency again? Because that's the big one. Winning the presidency in 2024 has to be what the focus is. A lot of these other smaller squabbles, I don't know, maybe not where all of our attention ought to be. And I'm anxious to make sure that we're not just primarying people out of a sense of purity, that we're focusing our limited resources on the races that we can win for the good reasons. But we'll see. And Dave's always such a smart guy to share all that information with us. So here's the deal. You can consider calling in. Definitely text in. I'll consider all that stuff, but you stick around. David Williams, George Brauchler on 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here halfway through the Tuesday show right here on 710 KNUS. We are working to make that connection that we have scheduled with D. Will. He's the state party chairman for the GOP. I just imagine he's just got 8 billion things going on, trying to juggle a bunch of balls. I did get an email ostensibly from him right as we were talking about him at about 9:54, announcing that they were going to have as their keynote speaker for the Centennial Dinner, which is a big annual dinner that they do every year. The Democrats' version of this is the Obama dinner or something like that. No joke, not just telling you what it's called. And he announced that Kari Lake is going to be the featured keynote speaker for that dinner. I'd love to ask him questions about that too. She's obviously a huge draw, a big draw for the grassroots and the base. I'm interested to know if part of this involves any sort of speaker fee or just the opportunity since she's running for the Senate. What's that? You do right now? Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's the chairman of the state GOP, Dave Williams. Sir, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me, George.
Hey, I was just announcing that when I was kind of teasing the folks that you were coming on in the next hour, that you had just sent out an email making a pretty big announcement about the keynote speaker for the Centennial Dinner.
Sure. We made that announcement about a week ago, but we're trying to remind everyone to show up as tickets will become less and less available as time goes on.
Now, tell us about Kari Lake. And, you know, every year, part of the issue is how do we get the right person to get the base motivated, to get people excited? It's going to help us move forward. How did you and Kari Lake get together on this?
You know, it really came down to availability. We sent out a number of invitations to a number of different folks, including the presidential candidates. And we're still inviting them to see if they can make it. I know that there are a few who are looking into their calendar to try and come, but we haven't received confirmation yet. But it really kind of came down to who would say yes first. And so she did, and we went that direction.
When someone the caliber of Kari Lake, who is red hot there for the grassroots, comes out, do we as a party pay her, or is she just taking the great opportunity to come out like we cover her expenses? How do we do that?
We are covering her expenses. I do think there is an honorarium that we're paying, but it's pretty minimal compared to some of the other speakers. Like, for instance, Charlie Kirk, he'll oftentimes want to charge a $25,000 fee. We're not paying that much. But
how much are we paying?
I think we're paying, don't quote me on this, anywhere between 5 and 10 for Kari.
I'm going to quote you on that. You're the chairman. For God's sake, Dave, if I can't quote you, who can I quote?
Well, I don't know the exact number, but yeah.
Dave, I would take 5 to 10. Isn't that a job you would love? Is like every couple weeks someone throws you out to $5,000 or $10,000 to come and talk about Republican stuff? You'd love that. I'd love that.
You know, it's a heck of a job. I know there's a lot of national prominent Republicans that do the speaker route, and they get paid very well to do that. But God bless them. They do motivate the base.
Oh,
you know, they need to make a living. So I don't begrudge it.
Maybe that's the post-chairmanship thing, is that you just go around and people pay to hear you talk about what you did to save the Colorado GOP.
If they're willing, I suppose.
Let's talk about the fundraising thing, since I ask you that every time you're on. Anyway, where are we today? It's beginning of that fourth quarter of our year. How are we doing on fundraising statewide?
We're doing pretty good. We have about, I believe, as of Saturday, my treasurer told me we had about $35,000 cash on hand. We have, through all of our efforts, collectively raised over 200 or so. The Kari Lake event should bring in some more money, and then we have other pledges that we're chasing down from other donors, and we're working with presidential campaigns to set up some fundraisers as well.
I should ask, so in case people hear like, oh my God, Kari Lake, I want to go hear Kari Lake. Where can they get information on the Centennial Dinner, and what do the tickets cost? You bet.
You can. Anyone can go find how to purchase out tickets by going to cologop.org/events. That's cologop.org/events. The base tickets are $125 per person. We'll give a discount for any couple to $200. per couple, and then there's some VIP options. I believe it's $250 or somewhere in that ballpark for one individual VIP ticket, and then it kind of goes up from there.
And what's the date on that thing again?
November 4th. It's a Saturday.
November 4th. Oh, so we're just about a year before the big day is when we do
Oh,
the
yeah.
Centennial Dinner. That's a big one. Let's talk about Saturday. Had another big Central Committee meeting. I think it was down there at the Rock, same place it had been before. And some of the rules that you and I had talked about back on the 18th of September came up for a vote. Kind of tell listeners what happened and how did it transpire?
You bet. I mean, I think the rules accomplished what they were supposed to accomplish. We had about a 96% turnout rate, and that was the goal, to encourage participation. I know it's a Saturday and people want to be able to enjoy their time and their weekend, but at the end of the day, you signed up for the job, and we needed people to show up, and they did. They showed up.
And was that turnout in person or proxy?
Well, in person and proxy, and that's fine. We understand.
No. Proxy is great because you're still participating. Did you get a sense of what percentage of the turnout was proxy versus in person?
Boy, that's a good question. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but it was substantial. I think there was about probably 180 proxies, somewhere around there. That ballpark.
Out of a total of how many?
416 total votes, but we only had about 401 or 2 rather represented at that meeting. That's pretty good turnout, though.
Yeah. That
so
sounds pretty good.
We had people show up and they did their job. They voted. At the end of the day, I don't think the rules were terribly consequential. You had, I think, maybe 3 people decide not to vote. They abstained. So everyone, picked a side. And yeah, it didn't meet the state required threshold for the opt-out, but 65%, voting to say let's opt out. That's first time in party history. Yeah.
That's a lot more. Did the rule pass that we had talked about, which was, hey, if you're an abstainer, one of the 3, your vote's going to be counted with whoever the majority is?
It did. It did pass. It was interesting, though, because that wasn't the main. It didn't seem like that was the main debating point when we got to the rules package. And before we could really get into the meat and potatoes of that specific rule, a member had come up and called the question, and then there was a second, and then we had to take a vote on ending debate, and 2/3 of the committee basically said, okay, let's end debate. And that makes sense because 2/3 of that committee essentially voted to opt out. So I wasn't surprised that there was overwhelming support for the rules package.
There was something else in terms of the way the votes were conducted. How many were voice votes versus, did you guys use clickers, paper? What was the mechanism that you did for the voting?
We did a combination of stuff. So on the easy things, we did voice vote, like approving the agenda. That's not controversial. The agenda is the agenda. When it came time for more important votes, like amending an amendment or a motion, we'd try to do a standing vote first, and if that wasn't clear, we would go ahead and go into a counted standing vote. And then even for the opt-out itself, we did a roll call vote by individuals. So that took about an hour to call on everyone that was there and get their yes, no, or abstain.
Was it important to get that vote on the record for people to have to say yes or no about opting out? We could have done it a number of ways just to get the number if we wanted to, right? We had ballots ready for people if they wanted to do it via secret ballot. But from my understanding on the lead up to it, there were a number of people that wanted some sort of roll call, even on the opposition side of it. Although I think the opposition side figured initially there would be a roll call by county as opposed to a roll call by individual name. But that's what the body wanted. They're the ones that signed a petition and delivered it to me, and that was in accordance with our rules that we had adopted. And so there was a roll call vote. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I'm not involved in any of that, but I'm hearing both sides want that document. They want to be able to tell everyone how everyone else voted. Do you think that in part that has an ability to influence someone's vote? Like I can think of someone who's like, I just don't think it's a good idea that we do this, but my God, man, I represent this super conservative portion of this party wherever my community is. If I vote no for this, they're going to punch me in the face, and I don't mean literally. You know what I'm talking
Sure.
about? They're going to come after
Sure.
me for this. Is that part of it?
It could be. I mean, it cuts both ways. It depends on the individual, but I've seen it where, yeah, it will influence you to vote no. It could even influence you to vote yes, depending on the political pressures you might be facing from your constituency.
There was another rule change, I think, that took place that was, hey, if you don't go through the assembly to get on the ballot for the primary, then the party itself can take up arms against you in a way and campaign against you and for your assembly going or assembly generated ballot person. Is that real? Did that really happen?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised by that. I didn't expect it to pass, but again, there was 2/3 vote for it. Essentially, what it does is it frees up officers to declare who they would prefer or support, and even allow those officers to donate to the candidate of their choosing. But you can't use party resources or anything like that. It's more for the individual officer to choose if they want to support someone that goes to the assembly when there's an event for a candidate who's solely petitioning on. So if a candidate petitions on and goes to the assembly, then this rule, doesn't allow them to pick a side. But if it's a candidate like Ron Hanks versus Joe O'Dea, for instance,
Sure,
then the party officers they're allowed to go ahead and support the person who went through the assembly.
Could the party, and I presume it's the chair and the vice chair and whoever the treasurer secretary is, that's who you're contemplating, right?
Right. Right.
Would they be freed up to support the person who went through the petition process? And I'm trying to envision what that would have. But are they free to support whoever they want, or they're only allowed to come out and support the person who went through the assembly?
My reading of the rules or that bylaw change is that they would only be freed up to support the assembly person. But after the primary is all said and done, they're still obligated to support the nominee, whoever won that.
What do you think the purpose of that rule is? Who offered it? Do you know?
Yeah, well, it was developed by the bylaws committee. I think it was originally offered by a gentleman, his name's Keith Maines, out of Adams County. And the bylaws committee took it up, and the consensus amongst that committee was that the caucus and the assembly has to mean something. And most of these races are not going to be determined through a primary. They're going to be determined through the caucus and assembly, and sometimes there'll be a contested primary. Most of the time, the races of consequence are going to be, determined in a strong Republican district anyway, and these officers don't get much say. This was an effort to, I think, address the frustration with the petitioner candidates and the ability to let officers weigh in on something that normally they don't get to weigh in on.
Would they be able to use their title in the party in their endorsement of whoever this individual was that went through the assembly?
They can't use their title to encourage folks, and that's in the rules. They can't use their title to encourage folks to donate or, do anything that, that could be construed as using resources from the party to help these people. But if they want to get out there and say, yeah, I want to support or endorse candidate X, they can do that.
So David Williams could go out and endorse someone, but David Williams, chairman of the state GOP, would not be permitted to go out in that way. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's how the rule was contemplated. I think it's a distinction without a difference, but that's how the rule's written.
Well, when you say distinction without a difference, I think it presupposes that folks voting in a primary will, absent that title, will know the significance of the person. And I got to tell you, man, you probably saw this too. Everybody in the grassroots movement tends to know who the party leadership is. Your neighbor 2 houses down has no clue, and they're going to get a ballot too. So without that title, it seems much more muted unless it's going to be couched in some other way that I can't contemplate. My only concern with this, and I've heard some people raise this, is it good for us to be in a position to take up arms against each other as party representatives. And then after it's over, then we say, well, let's just hug it out and we'll all move forward. And we're still going to try to get a victory. I mean, that's just tough. If you're a person that petitions on, I worry about that. Like, if you're like, well, wait a minute, now the party gets to turn on me. I'm part of this party too.
Well, my thought on this is twofold. I think number one, it could cut both ways, right? If you're on the receiving end of an endorsement for your opponent, then you can easily market it and say, look, this is insider baseball here. These are corrupt actors that are just trying to stack the deck, right, for the other side. So I think you can use that as a marketing, way to market your own campaign about how you're anti-establishment. I think the other thing to think about is in practice, I think most of these people, they do respect the rules to an extent, but most party officers have their favorites, and we've seen this play out many times, and I think this just gets it out in the open. I don't think it's a surprise if we see officers picking sides, and they may try to respect the letter of the law, but in practice or in spirit, it's not a surprise if we know who they're supporting. So.
Well, if that's true, then why limit it to just people who go through the assembly versus petition? Why not just take the gloves off and say, hey, if you're a member of the party leadership, you can support anybody you want openly?
I think there was a desire to put some guardrails in place to, make sure this doesn't go overboard. Because there is, as a party officer, you do need to make sure that people are being treated fairly with respect to resources that are being dispatched in a primary. So if two candidates want access to data and information, you got to give it to them, regardless of who you're going to support, because that information should be available to all Republican candidates, as an example.
Do you think it would make a candidate feel weird? I'm picturing the Joe O'Dea, the petition on candidate, to say, oh, great, I'd like to go to the state party and get access to this information, when he knows that I'm making this part up. Whoever the state chairman is says, I'm actively supporting your opponent, Joe O'Dea, but you can have equal access to information. Wouldn't that feel weird?
It might feel weird, but at the same time, there are candidates, legitimately or not, you have candidates who are petitioning on who don't feel the need to actually submit themselves, to the scrutiny from the most educated voters in our process. I mean, they want our branding, they want to be under our umbrella, but they don't want to court the party faithful. I mean, there's something here there's got to be a balance, I guess, in some sense. So I think one way to look at it is it encourages you to go through both. If you're going to petition on, fine, do what Heidi Ganahl did. Go through both processes. Go get a vote at the assembly and petition on. You don't got to worry about it.
Yeah, you already get the top line. That's a huge benefit you get from going through the assembly. I know that because I've only ever been nominated through the assembly process. That's a big deal. And I'm not sure if throwing on the other leadership thing, when this thing came up, was there a lot of vigorous debate about it, or it just kind of happened?
I think, we allowed for debate. I figured that there was going to be some robust debate, and sure enough, there was a number of folks that came up and opposed it, and they made a good case as to why it should be opposed. And of course, the other side, I think, mostly talked about, hey, we got petition candidates who don't care about us. And I think the other arguments that were leveled was, this is about accountability. We have a number of candidates who just trick voters through mass marketing. That was sort of the other side, or the prevailing side rather, and that's what they said. And again, I was a bit surprised that there was legitimately 2/3 there that said, yeah, let's try this. So,
was that based on that same kind of recorded vote, or how did you guys take that vote?
We did a standing vote.
And so, is that different than the standing count?
Yeah, no, we just did a straight standing vote. I didn't use any other extra time because it was clear. It was 2/3.
Interesting. And when you do the standing vote, how do you do the proxies?
So I ask everyone, this was clear to everyone at the beginning, if you have proxies, hold your badges, because we have badges for everyone, and even for the proxies, sure, we'll give you multiple badges. Said if you had badges, multiple badges, hold them up, and with two different hands and show me how much you got. So,
Oh my God! And you had to eyeball that over hundreds?
Yeah.
Well, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Did anybody complain, or was it like everyone was like, "Nah, I get it. It's overwhelming."
I mostly got complaints about not enough debate time, but 26 minutes was the agreed upon rules that everyone adopted, and I was up against a hard deadline anyway, but there was sufficient time for that debate. So I get people may not be happy with the outcome, but the process was fair.
One of the questions somebody texted in is, can you ask Dave about, and I have not heard this, Dave, but rumors that Dave may leave his term early, that Dave may resign.
Yeah, I don't know where this is coming from. I'm here
I have
to
not
stay.
heard it either. I have not heard it.
I got some of these questions not yesterday, Saturday too, and I said, I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm here to stay. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be the chairman. There's what else is there to say? I'm here.
And you intend to be here throughout the term, is what you're telling these, because I have not heard anybody say this before this, but I told folks I would ask questions if they texted them in.
Yeah, you bet. No, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be the chairman through the entirety of the 2024 cycle.
Can you tell us, too, in light of what's going on here, where are we with that lawsuit? Now that we've had the vote that says, hey, Judge, here is further evidence that this 75% is just a factual impossibility, right? It is not, it's a de facto bar. How does that then get put into the ongoing lawsuit that we have?
I think it's going to be used, obviously, by our attorneys to demonstrate that there is a healthy majority that wants to not only be out of the open primary, but they even tried to exercise their right through the opt-out. But that 75% bar was just too high. It just shows it's burdensome and a violation of our freedom of association rights. So we'll obviously talk about that. The Secretary of State wanted to. The Secretary of State they keep asking for extensions. In fact, they wanted an extension just to see how this vote would go on Saturday. And I think they're battling it out right now on how long that extension should be. The Secretary of State wanted a 30-day extension. Our side said no, but we'll give you 7 days. And so the judges, I think, got to decide how much longer the Secretary of State can continue to punt on this one.
Are our attorneys saying how long they think till the judge comes out with an ultimate decision on this? And I'm sure it'll be appealed, but I mean, is there some deadline that we're looking towards?
Yeah, I think
deadline may be too strong, or maybe it's season.
Yeah, I mean, the deadline might be a little too strong, but I think we're hopeful, or at least the attorneys are hopeful, that we could try and be out of the first round, the district court, by about the beginning of next year. Because there is a, we would like to have this happen in the 2024 cycle, but I don't think anyone thinks that it's gonna not be appealed. So this will get tracked out.
Is this the kind of thing, though, that can affect the 2024 election, or are we playing past that? Like, if you're saying that we may not get a result from the trial judge till early next year, all of a sudden, like you, I'm thinking to myself, well, wait. We've got precinct caucuses in February. We've got, county assemblies in March, April, and all this other stuff. Is this going to be resolved in a way that impacts how we pick our candidates for 2024, or is this way later?
I mean, we would love it to, but I don't think so. And I don't think our attorneys expect it to be resolved for the 2024 cycle. So, yeah, I think we're hoping we're wrong, right? I mean, we hope that it would affect the 2024 cycle, but we don't foresee that happening. We think this is going to go, if anything, it will affect the 2026 cycle if we get a favorable, ruling.
Is there a chance for some kind of an injunction that might trigger a change right now while this thing is pending?
Potentially, right? Potentially. In fact, I think we even asked for a preliminary injunction, but again, it's all up to the judge. We just don't know, right? We'll make our case, and we think it's a strong one. But again, we just don't know. We don't know what they'll do.
We're talking with Dave Williams. He's the chair of the state GOP. A day before I cut you loose, and you've been very generous with your time. Any last minute things you want to update us on that are going on with parties or candidates, or hey, here's a race that we're targeting or an issue that we're focused on in the near term?
Yeah. I think, two things. Number one, there are folks who wanted the opt-out to pass, those who didn't, obviously. Well, at this point, we need to come together and support the lawsuit, regardless of your feelings on the opt-out. And then number two, we need to start focusing on the competitive Democrat races that we can win. And in the weeks to come, I'll be emailing the other counties that have these targeted races on what we can do to work together to flip them. And we think we're going to be able to flip them, especially with the overreach that Democrats are engaged in. I think the property tax issue is a good, precursor to how Democrats are screwing up the state. And if we can continue to talk about that, among other things related to inflation and crime, we're going to be having a good 2024, especially as Joe Biden drags his own ticket down.
My goodness. It also seems like what you're indicating is this vote on this past Saturday was it. There's no chance for us now in advance of the 2024 election to come back for yet another vote to opt out. Is that it? Like this was the last one that worked on the calendar?
Yeah, I mean, state law, again, we don't like the state law, but the state law was very clear. It says we got to have the vote before October 1st. Now it's the 3rd. There's no other vote to be had. So we got
it turns out reading the law, which I did not do, makes a big difference. Thank you for doing that.
You bet. You bet.
Dave Williams, as always, thanks for your time on this. I always get great feedback from listeners, whether it's by text, during, before, or even afterwards. I think people are just happy to have you so accessible. So I appreciate that, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, you bet, George. Anytime.
That's David Williams. He is the state GOP chair, talking about everything from Carrie Lake coming to the Centennial Dinner coming up on November the 4th. You can get those tickets at the state website, to the recent rule changes on Saturday and some that didn't happen, and the next steps on the lawsuit stuff. I love hearing about things like this. If you've got thoughts, I'd love to hear them as well. Is the state party putting in place what it needs to for us to continue to move forward? I'm a little bummed, by the way, that it doesn't look like our lawsuit's going to have an impact on 2024. I just thought it was, again, I don't know why. I'm in the judicial process. I thought there was a chance it would work more quickly than that. But anyway, if you've got questions, you've got comments, give me a call, 303-696-1971. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. This may be a first for us right here on 710 KNUS. One, I just had a mini conversation with only me in the hotel room because I didn't plug the damn mic back in. But that's Def Leppard, folks. That is some of the OG Def Leppard from back in the early 80s. I remember rocking out to that back when my hair curled up behind my neck because it was a little bit long. George Brauchler back with you here on 710 KNUS. My thanks to David Williams. He's the chair of the state GOP party. Interesting conversation. A lot of good information there. One, the Kerry Lake piece, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Dave a ton about that. I was interested in the fact that, and I don't know how you get to be these guys, but getting paid $5 to $10 grand to come give a talk, expenses paid. Daddy, like that. That's the kind of business I would like, Billy. So I don't know if you can start to research how do Billy and George get paid to go do this somewhere.
Yes, we need to be able to do that. Yeah, and I like that.
I'd love.
Yeah. You were doing the Def Leppard thing for Bringing On the Heartbreak.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's off the High and Dry album. That was released originally back in 81 and didn't hit, and then was re-released in 84. Yeah, it's kind of it's a blend between, I think it was the guitarist and someone else wrote that one together. Joe Elliott came in at the end doing some of the lyrics, but I always like that one because that's off High and Dry, and they were talking about getting it onto Pyromania or Hysteria, but it didn't actually fit, and they tried releasing it earlier, and then it hit 3 years later.
So when was Pyromania?
That I don't remember. I have to look at what's. Yeah, I have to go back. And
was this back when? This is back when the drummer had both arms.
Yes, exactly.
Because he got injured later. I think it was a motorcycle accident or something. But then he came back and was like still playing drums.
Yeah,
I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, but I think it's, if I remember correctly, I believe that most of the songs on High and Dry were actually released elsewhere before Pyromania. Then Pyromania came out, and then they hit it big, and then they re-released High and Dry. So I think that's the cycle, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but I think that's the cycle. That's why it dropped in 81 and then came back 3 years later Just a weird thing. Several times that's happened as far
Interesting.
as songs. So I could take us down a giant rabbit hole. I'm going to step aside and I'm going to go figure out how
I
I can get paid to
really
just talk to
wish
people.
that I had asked David Williams about this too.
Oh, yeah.
'cause I don't.
He definitely want to know about that one. Yes.
He's a younger man, Billy. He may
Oh,
not.
yeah.
He may think of Def Leppard as like, Perry Como or something.
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. He's like, who? Deaf what? It's aren't those the band that can't hear? Yeah.
Some texts that I have that have come in are from people who were at the assembly or who know folks who were at the assembly. And there was really some pushback is the nicest way I can put this, from some people who are saying that description of the vote on allowing state party members to, pick sides against a petitioner and all that, that was not 65%, nor was it obvious. I'm going to read you this one. It said, no chance, that only 65% voted to opt out, yet more than that voted to change the bylaws. Said Dave would not do any sort of ballot or count that would show that. Painfully obvious with a voice vote first and the standing vote second that it was potentially under 50%, but clearly not 66%. That is interesting. Other texters, and from Sherry Pife's interview yesterday, she had a completely different opinion as to whether there were 2/3 that stood for that proposition. The part that got me, if you picture in your mind how that goes down, Dave says this: we got a ton of proxies. In fact, out of 400 people, something like 100 plus, maybe it was more than a third, were proxies. And so what we'd have is when people had proxies, we'd give them individual badges for the proxy votes. And when they stood up, I'd ask them to stand up and hold the badges above. How in the world can you know? I mean, one question I failed to ask was, are there a limit to the number of proxies you can have? Like if it's 1 or 2, great. Then you have 1 in each hand. That's easy to count. But if someone's got, and I just don't know the answer, folks, 10 proxies, and you stand up in your whole, how does Dave know you have 10? How does anybody know that you have 10? Are you shouting out 10 and they add you differently than those around you? That's a tough one. That makes that standing count one way more beneficial than the voice vote, because by the way, how can you possibly do a voice vote with proxies? Do you amplify the proxy voice by the number of proxies they have? How do you do that? So the counting thing, it's very interesting. It seems like, although it might have slowed things down, going to a counted vote where you included the proxies would probably be the only way to ensure any sort of accuracy in that, unless it was just so overwhelming. And that's what Dave said. These other texters were like, hey, I don't agree. I was there. I don't think it was overwhelming in that way. Do you think that the party is on the right track? Do you think that we've made the moves, that these are the right moves? Now, you got to admit this, man, with between proxies and in person, Dave said they were over 95%. I can't remember the exact number he gave. That's huge turnout. That's tremendous. That's exactly what you want for that level of participation. You'd love 100%. But now we've gone from, I think it was a year ago when the party tried to opt out of the primary. It was like 30-something%, pretty anemic. Now it's up over 65%. Why did that happen? Is it new people that are making it onto the state central committee? Or is it a change of opinion about what we need to do as a party? I think the other thing that was interesting about that interview is when I asked Dave, why the recorded vote for just that vote? And I think it's pretty obvious. And I know Dave said it could cut both ways, and I suppose that's arguable. But it's pretty clear that they wanted on the record the people that could then be targeted who did not vote to opt out of the primary. I don't know any grassroots organization that's going to say, oh, you voted to opt out, we're coming to get. I just don't know that. But my guess is in the next central committee vote cycle, whenever that is, there's going to be people that say, this dude, I'm running against this dude to be on the state central committee because this dude right here voted to stay in our primary. They voted to let unaffiliateds pick our candidates. That conversation is going to happen, and it can only happen when you do that recorded voice vote. I do think there's an obvious intention there. You can call it transparency, and it probably is. And I guess I'm not opposed to that, but there is an intimidation factor there. But honestly, it's probably a legit issue. isn't it, to consider if you're going to go to the state central committee, especially with this issue having been such a big one for the last year, if someone's going to go serve on that group and be a representative, I think that the party people sending them ought to know their position on the opt-out. So I'm not bummed about that, but I think you have to acknowledge that there is some intimidation there. I mean, that it's designed to put pressure on people to vote a different way. And I think maybe that's not bad. Maybe that's not a bad thing to do. 303-696-1971 is the number. Here's some texts that have coming in. Thanks for asking the hard questions. Dave said that, what is it? Dave said that it was a chair's decision as to who won that one, that rule change we were talking about, allowing party officials to come after petitioners. Another text coming in here. Dave's answer to the resignation shows that the rumor is out there because he said he was asked multiple times Saturday. I didn't know he was asked multiple times Saturday. Look, I think Dave was pretty unequivocal. Dude's not resigning in this term. Says he's going to serve out this 2024 election term. I don't know what more you can ask of someone. Dude isn't committed to doing it over and over and over again. He said he's going to stick it out through 2024. I take him at his word. Whatever that rumor was, I think we ought to put it to bed and start focusing on winning some elections, which is what we need to do. Listen, I'm going to do this. I'm going to cut away for a break. Let you fill up the lines at 303-696-1971. Before we cut away, though, I want to tell you, and we had these fantastic folks on yesterday. I want to tell you about a kinder, gentler way to get well, to experience wellness while overcoming the aches and the soreness. And I'm talking about this from my own personal experience, and that's with UltraCur. It is, and we had the two guys on that run the show yesterday for UltraCur, a patented non-prescription. That's great. Natural, also great capsule that works fast. Listen to this, the surveys and stuff that they've done. Listen to these numbers. 50% of people, that's a half. That's what I learned from Billy. Half is 50% of people using UltraCur find relief within a mere 48 hours. Half of those within 2 hours of UltraCur. Bottom line is, you don't have to take my word for it or Billy's word for it or even the two guys that were running the show with UltraCur's word for it. You can go get a 3-day free sample from any natural grocers. You just go there and talk to the vitamin manager, and they all have one. Say, I'd love to get a 3-day free trial and give it a shot. That's how confident they are that you're going to feel something great within at least 3 days, maybe sooner. They give you the 3 days for free. In fact, you heard them yesterday on our interview say, grab an extra 3. They'll give you an extra 3 to give to a neighbor or a friend or a relative or somebody that you love and have them try it too. You guys compare experiences. You can also find all the information you want from UltraCur at Get Ultra Now. Get ULTRA now.com. Now listen, I know what you're thinking. George, are you screwing it up? Is it supposed to be UltraCure? No. It's UltraCur, C-U umlaut, for those of you who remember high school German, R, and that's because curcumin is one of the main ingredients of this thing. It is a huge antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-all the bad stuff kind of thing. Check it out at Natural Grocers. When we come back, you, me, and the lines at 303-696-1971. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, final moments of that third hour of 4 on the show. We'll be back in the 9 o'clock hour. My thanks to Dave Williams again for coming on, talking to us about the direction of the party and some of the things that went on in that state central committee meeting. I just wish I had been there to ask better questions because I wasn't there to witness any of it. But Dave's vantage point was overwhelming support for the rule change that provided an opportunity for party leaders to take up positions against a petitioned on Republican, and then a bunch of people that texted in, and by a bunch, I mean, it was a handful that texted in and said, hey, that's not exactly how it went down. Here are these things. I just wish I had the ability to ask Dave about it maybe next time when he comes back on, and I really appreciate that he does. Something I want to tease for you coming up in this next hour. Guy named Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you know his dad. Guy's going to run for president, but maybe not as a Democrat. We're going to talk about what that means. We'll get some sound. We'll get Charlie Kirk's take on it, your take on it. You get the phone lines ready at 303-696-1971. You stick around for that final hour of the show. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here. Final hour of the show. I'm talking to you live. No, not from the great city of Denver, Colorado. That is a city upon a hill, Mile High City. No, I'm down here much closer to sea level in a place called Hamilton, New Jersey. At the wonderful Residence Inn, I have a view of what I can only describe as nothing. It's just a street that kind of keeps going. There appears to be some sort of an Amazon warehouse right across the parking lot. This is the Eisenhower suite of the Residence Inn here in Hamilton. Lovely hotel. I'm sure doing a lot of great work for people that, like me, just need a place to crash overnight and run a radio show. Here's what's going on. Guy named Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had tried to stir things up on the Democrat side, tried to get some traction going. This was a guy that wants to run for president. He's out there working out by the beach in jeans and no shirt. It's a weird combo, but there it is. It happened. Guy seems to be in pretty good shape, well-preserved, son of the former senator, then U.S. Attorney General under his brother, and then guy that probably would have been president, Bobby Kennedy, if he hadn't been assassinated by Sirhan out there in California. He's running for president, no doubt about it, but he had something that he wanted to say on Friday that's sort of a little foreshadowing for our conversation this hour. Billy, do you have that?
Hi, everybody. I'm going to be in Philadelphia on October 9th to make a major announcement at the very birthplace of our nation. I'm not going to tell you right now exactly what that announcement will be. I can say, though, that if you've been waiting to come to one of my public events, this will be the one to come to. I'll be speaking about a sea change in American politics and what your part and my part is in that change. A lot of Americans who had previously given up any hope that real change would ever come through the American electoral process have begun to find new hope in my candidacy. And I understand the deeply felt concern that people have about the way corruption has overtaken our government. It's in the executive branch, it's in Congress, it's in the leadership of both political parties. And so some people feel a kind of cynicism alongside the hope, or they lose hope entirely because they've been disappointed so many times. I want to tell you now what I've come to understand after 6 months of campaigning. There is a path to victory. The hope we are feeling isn't some kind of trick of the mind. We all recognize that there's a genuine possibility of national transformation, and its source is the goodness of the American people. Our government may be crooked, but our people are kind, brave, and caring. That goodness is stronger than the divisions that are keeping us all apart. I see it every day on the campaign trail, and the more I see it, the more I trust it. And the more I trust it, the more the path to victory becomes visible. So how are we going to win against the established Washington interests? It's not through playing the game by the corrupt rules that the corrupt powers and the vested interests have rigged to keep us all in their thrall. Instead, we're going to have to rewrite the assumptions and change the habits of American politics. We're going to tap into a mighty surge of people power to reclaim an honest, peaceful, just, and prosperous America. So I am inviting you to join me in Philadelphia on October 9th. There I'll share with you our path to the White House and how we can all participate in healing our nation.
Well, listen, you're welcome, by the way, Robert Kennedy Jr., for that posting of that. I don't think we'll ever play that thing again in its entirety. But that's Robert Kennedy teasing what has to be the announcement that he's going to run as a third-party candidate. But I don't know what that third party is. Third party may be too strong. He could run as an unaffiliated, but you just don't have the framework. Maybe he's going to be the guy that gets in bed with the no labels party. I don't know. But we're going to find out. I think this week he's going to make that announcement. I think the big question here is, do you believe him when he says that America is capable of, and it's within our reach to do this big sea change in politics, and that we're ready to elect someone who isn't a Republican or a Democrat? Being ready in conversation, sure. I've had conversations with people that say that. Ready in reality, I don't think so. I don't see it, but I'm interested to know your opinion on this. The other part of this, though, that is almost more interesting because I think it has a real, tangible, maybe even measurable impact when all the dust settles is, who does this hurt more? Does it hurt Joe Biden or does it hurt Donald Trump? And I'm acting as if Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee because, spoiler alert here, he's going to be the nominee. Who does this hurt more? Now, I get it. At first blush, maybe you take the position of Jesse Waters. Jesse thinks this is the final nail in the Joe Biden coffin. This is going to destroy him because Robert Kennedy was a Democrat. He comes from that lineage of Democrat royalty, the Kennedy family, and this is going to pull a bunch of those people into voting for him, and it's just going to make it impossible for Joe Biden to pull this off. That is not shared by other conservative commentators. In fact, Billy's found a clip from a guy you've heard of before. We're still trying to get this cat on the radio, by the way, before we turn the show over to him later on after this hour. His name is Charlie Kirk. Billy, you got that sound?
But far more of the I don't trust the government brigade would vote for RFK Jr. if he were to run as a libertarian, which then begs the question, why are there so many articles out of nowhere, ex nihilo, pushing RFK Jr. saying he's going to hurt Biden? This feels like an op, a scheme, a strategy, a machination, a plot, a ploy, where they're trying to convince you that this is bad for Biden to run as a libertarian. Now, let's just think about this. Is there any evidence that when a libertarian runs for office, it hurts Democrats? Any evidence? No. In fact, libertarians being on the ballot almost always hurt Republicans. And we know this. We see it in so many different states.
CD8.
Libertarian being on the ballot hurt Donald Trump in Arizona and Georgia in 2020 and hurt us in the Kelly Loeffler, David Perdue Senate race. So now the media is trying to convince you because of some flimsy polling. And again, I am receiving hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails. Charlie, love RFK Jr. He's a man of his own ideas. Trump should pick him as his vice president. Whoa, 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 whoa. No, he should not. That's a bad idea. Okay.
Yeah, that's Charlie Kirk. He comes on after us, and that's his position on the RFK thing. Now, one thing that's different about Charlie's take on it, or potentially different, is that he says that RFK running as a libertarian. Now, the article that quotes Jesse Waters from Fox News, I think he was O'Reilly's former intern or something like that, but now the guy's got his own show, said that Kennedy's independent run will devastate Biden's shot at re-election. Now, independent is different than libertarian. Libertarian would be third party. Independent would be no party. Like you're either unaffiliated or you're affiliated. And I'm going to spend the rest of my political juice here throughout the years that I have left disabusing people of the notion that if you're not a Republican or a Democrat, you're not registered, you're independent. You are not independent. You are unaffiliated. Your independence is a function of how you vote, not your affiliation. And so if this guy ends up running as an independent, not as part of a libertarian or the Green Party or the fill in the blank party, even the American Constitution Party, the Hank Schwanger Party from the last cycle, does this guy hurt Biden more, or does he hurt Trump more? Do you welcome this news as yes, thank you? Or maybe you're an RFK Jr. person. Like I would vote for RFK Jr. If you would vote for RFK Jr., call in and tell me about it. 303-696-1971. Would you have voted for him when he was a registered Democrat? Or is it, no, I'm never going to vote for a Democrat. But if the dude unaffiliates, if he becomes independent, truly independent, I will vote for him. Tell me about that and what the rationale for that is. And I've heard, like Charlie, a lot of people say, well, you know, he's got his own independent thoughts and he's a conservative Democrat. Isn't that what we need? I don't know, man. I don't know who this cat is. I don't know what life he's led. But when I talked about, what was it, last week, Ron DeSantis's voice being an issue for him. Oh, by the way, Billy, this is how the sausage gets made, folks. Any luck with that expert on the voice thing, that PhD dude that Kel turned us on to? We have a guy that is a voice. I don't know what you call it. He's some kind of dang expert, but he did a study on this whole voice thing that I just happened to just listen to Ron DeSantis talk and say, he just doesn't sound good. There's some legitimacy to that, or at least there's some studies out there, some science on it. We're going to get someone on to talk about it. But if that's true for Ron DeSantis, my God, what do you do with Kennedy's voice? It doesn't sound strong. He looks strong. Dude looks like he's in great shape. And I don't know what that medical reason is. I know there is one. This isn't a comment on his character. It's the superficial stuff that goes along with electing someone. But folks, the superficial stuff matters to voters. We have moved in a place where substance, has its value, but we care about how someone looks. We care about how they sound. And this cat's voice, not that commanding, not that strong. It sounds pretty weak. Here's some texts that are coming in, and you can call us at 303-696-1971. I don't know a single Democrat that says they have any interest in RFK, but I do hear his name on your show from callers occasionally. Well, believe me, I am not the origin of the RFK thing. I've been very surprised that he has positioned himself to the right of Biden on every issue that I'm aware of. Personally, I don't see him pulling votes from Biden. Interesting, isn't it, folks? Isn't that a big deal? Charlie Kirk's taking it to the next level. He's like, I don't think it's going to be good for Trump, but I also think this is on purpose. Like he said, I think he played the role of Roget's thesaurus there, going through everything that's a synonym of operation. It was an op. It was a ploy. It was a conundrum. It was a whatever it was. I think he thinks there's something more deliberate going on here at a higher level. I just don't see that. Not that it couldn't happen in Hollywood or in books, but folks, I just don't know someone that runs a national campaign for president to try to get somebody else elected. I don't see Robert Kennedy going, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'll help you out, Joe. I'll help you out, Democrat Party. And then someone's going to say, but he's going to get something at the end. He's going to be made secretary of something, or the guy doesn't need any of that stuff. And you don't sign up for an election to run to help someone else get elected. That's coming from a guy who's run 4 times, and I'm batting 50%, right? I mean, I know why you run, and one of them isn't to help somebody else out. That just isn't the answer. Another text. RFK Jr. is a trash candidate who feels like a plaintiff's attorney that has come to believe too many of the slanted studies he relied on in practice, and he just happens to be rich and have a name that enables his idiotic run. He'll steal maybe some of the dumber voters, probably hurting Dems more. Interesting. A different take. Question, Georgie, why do you cite Chuck Kirk? Ben Shapiro is more in tune to actual real life versus hope and praying. Over the last election, 2022, I was watching Chuck's YouTube show. He made these mathematical predictions and ended up looking like Dick Morris. I don't know anything about that. That's a great question. I don't know. I don't watch his YouTube thing, but the guy is really influential and huge when it comes to Salem, not just because he's on this radio station after me, and I probably dragged down any ratings momentum he'd have gotten coming out of this slot, but because this guy gets views and clicks and followers. That is a measure of stuff, right? And it's not bots. It is a measure of influence. It's a measure of how this guy resonates. And it's not because he's saying just dumb things. He's saying things that not only resonate with people, but sort of match with what ends up happening. Doesn't mean the guy's right all the time. I don't know the numbers of the predictions, but it's interesting that he thinks that RFK Jr. may actually be worse off for President Trump. And Billy and I were talking about this off air. That could be true. That could be true. This is a guy who has gotten notoriety running, as the texter said, to the right of Joe Biden, taking up those conservative positions. I don't know. Who does that hurt more? Let's go to the phone lines right now. Frank from Golden, you're on 710 KNUS.
Hey, George. Hey, listen,
sir.
I think I've made my position on Trump and Biden relatively clear, is that right now I really would not vote for either. I would just elect to not vote. But if RFK Jr. voted or ran as some weird independent or whatever, I'd vote for him just to place a vote somewhere rather than for the mummy or the megalomaniac criminal. If those are my choices, I go with RFK Jr. And just like I said, it's more or less. I recognize it might be a throwaway trash vote. So what? It's my vote.
No, but isn't it more than that though, Frank? And this is the part where, and I've expressed this a bunch. You and I have even talked about this. The problem is, you really truly only have, for effective purposes, a binary choice, no matter how many other people, including Kennedy, are out there. And so a vote for Biden is a vote for Biden, right? A vote not
Agreed.
for Trump is a half vote for Biden, because it just lessens the distance he has to cover to get to a majority in some of these swing counties, which is what he needs. That's the part that gets me.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And I think that's been a function of the last two elections, is that really, I mean, Trump became president because nobody was going to vote for Hillary, or it was a vote against Hillary. And Biden's president now because it was a vote against Trump. And I'm not going to continue to I guess I am continuing. If I were to vote for RFK Jr., it's a vote in the negative, but it's at least for somebody. I mean, I don't want to have any more elections in the negative. If we could possibly avoid this, that's why I honestly think, look, if the Democrats can get their heads out of their you-know-whats and run anybody who is coherent and adult, they're going to win. I mean, it's just that simple, because it's once again a vote in the negative. That's where we are.
Referring to Charlie Kirk, when I saw him at this little event with CU Oregon, the bloodletting, and it pissed me off about Charlie because he was rooting for Oregon. He did it very, very respectfully, but he was rooting for the team that was disemboweling my alma mater. So it's a sore spot. But he went through some numbers during halftime in this talk that he gave, and those numbers, I've heard these echoed before, that there are just a handful of votes relative to the national total. So I'm making this number up, but it sounded right. Like 50,000 votes, 30,000 votes, 40,000 votes in a handful of swing counties that would have made the difference in these states. And that was really what turned the election one way or the other. Now, whether that is going to hold true for 2024, does Kennedy, based on what you've said, and you would be inclined to give him a look, and people that you've talked to, whether it's at the water cooler or family or whatever, does this guy have the chance of taking away votes, even in those swing counties, from Trump or from Biden, if it's going to come down to just a handful of votes?
Wow. See, I'm not 100%. I don't know. I'm not sure I've thought about that as far downstream as Charlie Kirk or anybody, but I think that, boy, I don't know how that cuts. I think it could be more destructive to Trump. I think that's a distinct possibility, because I think that basically the country is more center right than it is anything else. And I think that if you get away from the crazy left that I think Biden is basically beholden to, or whoever's got their hand up the back of Biden is a part of, it could bend towards RFK Jr. Just because he is not, I don't think, everything I've read or heard about RFK Jr. is that he is not entirely a sock puppet of the crazy left. That's what I've heard and read.
Yeah, I imagine he's a stronger, more independent person just because he's running. I don't see other nefarious forces at work in getting a dude like that to end up running when he doesn't need to run. I mean, who wants to be that guy? I don't know. I think of Ross Perot. Like, did he make a positive? He did. I think he did potentially impact the outcome, but all of the post voting studies say that he took equally from Bush and Clinton. I know the narrative is he caused Clinton to win. I just don't know if this guy jumps into the race for that. Let me, before I let you go, Frank, because I want to get your opinion on this. You know, we talked last week about DeSantis's voice. I realized that Kennedy's, and somebody called in, a doctor called in and said, hey, it's due to a medical condition. I accept that. I'm not blaming him. I don't think it's a flaw, but is it something you think that could impact also his candidacy?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I think that there's an awful lot of this that is just marketing. It's just marketing. And I think that when you have kind of a marginally defective product out there, not, I'm saying defective, that's maybe the wrong term, but whatever. It's something that's different and maybe a little bit grating to some. I think that it can affect things. I mean, I honestly think that, I remember you were talking a little bit about Truman, when he became president, and then ultimately defeated Dewey in his own election. I don't know if Truman would have, his voice was a real, he was kind of he had a unique voice. It really was. He was a marginally defective product, and not God. I just keep saying defective. I can't default to another word, but he was.
You were
unique.
saying different, yeah.
Yeah.
Unique.
The island of misfit toys. Let's put it that way. He was on the island of misfit toys.
I lived there.
And has his DeSantis, and to some extent has his RFK Jr. He's got a weird. Was he a smoker or something? The guy's got a really raspy, crazy voice.
I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I worry about those little things. I also think that for the folks out there who are committed to the idea that now's the time, people are so unhappy with Biden and Trump that a third party could win. They can't win. I'm just telling you, it's not going to happen.
I agree.
Yeah, all they can do is affect it. Hey, Frank, thanks for the call, my man. As always, great conversation. Frank's line is going to be open at 303-696-1971. We're going to cut away from a break for a break and come back and continue to do the text. Can Robert Kennedy make a difference? Is he the kind of person you might cast a vote for? If so, why? And I got to tell you, the Charlie thing, dude's a wicked smart guy. Is he onto something here? I mean, do you think that there are some other powers at work to encourage Kennedy to jump in because of the impact on Trump? I don't see that. I just don't operate in a world where I see, goblins behind every corner. But it's possible, right? It's possible. 303-696-1971. When it comes to buying or selling your home, there's a lot of realtors out there who simply want to win over your business and then tell you, I'll let you know what you need to know when you need to know it, right? Like, I'm an expert. That's why you hired me. Let me go do my thing. It's not quite like that with Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team of Keller Williams. They're happy to share with you their expertise, their skills, their commitment, and all that stuff. But they want you to be the best educated client that they can get. And that makes them unique. They're not afraid of what you know or the questions that what you know will cause you to ask. That they're not afraid of that. They want that because they know that if they can answer your questions, it puts them in a position to get you a better house to address your specific financial situation. They don't have to waste your time or theirs chasing down a home in a neighborhood you don't like or in a price range you're not agreeable to or for a risk that's too low for you. You want to take a bigger, whatever it is. So you can go to empowerhomefreeworkshops.com, empowerhomefreeworkshops.com, and just tool around there. It's free. It's baked into the title, empowerhomefreeworkshops.com. Look at all the information that they have. Make yourself a smarter home buyer and then pick up the phone and call them at 833-301-SOLD. That's also baked into the number. Sold. 833-301-SOLD. You can also check her out at gayhasthebuyers.com because they do just this way, the way I told you. 14,600 plus buyers waiting for that next home to be listed with them so that they can have that little feeding frenzy and driving the price up. Gayhasthebuyers.com. When we come back, you, me, the calls, the text. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy. Why should you buy your
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, talking about Robert Kennedy. He's going to make the decision to jump into this presidential race. Kind of already made the decision, but I think he's leaving the Democrat Party. He needs to do that, I think, on most states' ballots, Colorado in particular, before 1 year before the date of the general election. Now, that touches on a couple things here. I think that rule is true, and if you're a clerk and recorder or former one out there and you know a better answer than I'm about to give, I think you have to be affiliated with the party you're going to be on the ballot on. I think in the jurisdiction in which you live for at least, or that you're going to run for at least 1 year before the general election, not a year before the ballots go out, but a year before the general election. So whatever posturing and preening and moving there is right now to run for, whether it's, and I don't think this is going to happen out on the Western Slope, Lauren Boebert's, or if someone's going to try to primary somebody out here in Lamborn or Bucks District, which I also think is foolhardy and a waste of time and money, given everything that we've got going on, you're going to have to move Ricky Tick right soon because this 1 year thing could be the cutoff to access for the ballot. I think that's why Kennedy is choosing to do this now. It gives him a few weeks here. You know, he's starting in early October, gives him just a little bit less than a month to ramp up for that 1 year mark and try to draw attention away. Does he become the Ross Perot of this election? And if he is the Ross Perot, because he can't win. Folks, I can't make this clearer. No independent candidate is going to win presidency. I will tell you, I am so certain of that even if Donald Trump somehow chose to run as an unaffiliated or anything other than a Republican, he too would not win presidency of the United States. Won't happen. There just isn't the infrastructure there. There isn't the history there. I do not believe it. And for all those people who cheer on the idea that we're just so dissatisfied with the parties, and look at in Colorado, 47% of registered voters are unaffiliated. So what? It's not enough. Not yet. We could get there, but it ain't going to happen. So the only analysis that matters for purposes of Robert Kennedy in 2024 isn't can he win. The answer for me is an unequivocal no, he cannot win. I'll go further. I don't think the dude will win a single electoral vote in a state that goes winner takes all. Could he pull off an individual electoral vote here or there? He could. I'm doubtful of that. But dude ain't going to win any states. Certainly not in a winner take all. It's never going to happen. It wouldn't surprise me if by the end of this he had 0 electoral votes. But whatever it is, it will never be enough to challenge for president of the United States. That's not the analysis. The analysis is, who does this hurt more, Trump or Biden? Let me know. 303-696-1971. I asked about the voice thing too, and Billy told me that the doctor that called in, and thank you for doing that. We always want to be made smarter by the listeners, it's called spastic something or other. I don't think Billy got the whole word down, and I don't know what it is either. But it's the spastics. This is the actual text from Billy. It's called spastic something or other.
Yeah. Spastic dysmorphon.
There's a lot of T's and P's in that one.
There were a lot of consonants together that I was not able to write down quickly at the time. So,
and I presume in part it's like, hey, you should know it's a medical thing because then we can't make fun of it. It's not a question to make fun of it. It's a question of what's the subconscious impact of somebody's voice or their appearance on their electability. I just think at the national level, all of those things that may not matter in a local race all of a sudden matter.
All I'm saying, like Stephen Hawking, brilliant man,
brilliant,
not certain I want to listen to a 45-minute stump speech from him.
Or an audio book that he reads.
Yeah, exactly. But again, brilliant man. So, but having conversation back and forth, things like that, yes, absolutely. And given the fact that how superficial and how surface we are in making some of the choices, especially with our politicians, voice does matter. Voice absolutely matters. We're very superficial. In fact, this is kind of pulling thing behind the curtain, but one of the few known tricks that they do in Major League Baseball is if the person interviewing the Major League Baseball player is taller, they will give the player a bucket or a box to stand on. So they are at least the same height or taller.
What?
Yes. Also happens in professional wrestling too, but you can catch it a lot in baseball. Yeah. You don't have that necessarily in the NBA or in the NFL. You don't necessarily have the people interviewing them as taller, but it can happen in Major League Baseball. So oftentimes, if you're paying attention, the baseball player could be, not always, but could be on either a box or even a bucket sometimes, depending on the height. So, yeah. Also,
someone else texted in about this thing, the voice thing. Okay, a little more on RFK Jr.'s voice. According to ABC News, he suffers from spasmodic dysphonia. I think you were getting there.
Sure, I'll take that. Yeah.
Spasmodic dysphonia, a specific form of an involuntary movement disorder called dystonia that affects only the voice box. Man, that's interesting. I don't know how to describe it. It's just one of those things. I mean, listen, we've known this for so long about the superficial stuff. They hid from America FDR's paraplegia.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They
hid that.
Yeah.
What's that?
That was easier at the time, but I got a question.
Yeah, easier, but the point was the same. And it was the idea that the public makes decisions about strength and leadership based on perception more than reality. And so this guy could be the toughest SOB ever to run for president. He don't sound like it.
Now, did you see there is it's an American values poll that was done by Zogby in the last couple of weeks that basically they did a 3-way poll between Kennedy, RFK Jr., Biden, and Trump. Now, the interesting thing is that both Biden and Trump would start out with right around 38%, and RFK started right around 19%. But the interesting part is further on down inside of the poll was that the attraction and the pull towards RFK was greater on the Trump support side than it was on the Biden support side. That more potential Trump voters were attracted to RFK than more potential Biden voters being attracted to RFK. Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
That's the conversation for us. Is this guy going to make it harder for Trump to get reelected and easier? If you are in each of those war rooms right now, who's clapping? Who's saying yes? Is it the Biden people or the Trump? And based on that, Billy, it sounds like the Biden people would be like, thank God, man. First off, good riddance. That's one more primary we don't have to worry about. But two, yeah, go steal votes from Trump. We don't care.
Yeah, and I would have to side with Charlie Kirk on this one. I do think a potential RFK run is more beneficial to Biden for a couple of reasons. One, I believe that the Democrats will play ball based on the scoreboard. They will look at the scoreboard and figure out where we are in the game, just like they did during the previous nomination process as they were choosing someone to go up against Trump in 2020. Nobody had Joe Biden as their number one choice, but they slowly coalesced around him because over and over again, that was the path to victory. So everyone kind of did that. And I still believe that the Democrats, the people on the liberal side of the aisle, eventually will coalesce around Biden because of the scoreboard. They need to have more points on their side of the scoreboard than on the GOP side of the scoreboard when it comes to the Electoral College, and they know that RFK isn't going to help. In this particular cycle, Republicans appeared to be more driven by principle, whatever that principle may be, but the principle is that Donald Trump is the best person to run our party. So that seems to be where they're running, and those that are turned off a little bit about Trump and the potential of him coming back into office, because we know in 2020, part of the reason he lost was Republicans not voting for him. There seems to be more wiggle room of someone that would allow themselves to have permission to vote for an RFK if you were a Trump supporter, because now it doesn't mean I'm voting for Biden. I haven't broken that cardinal rule. I'm not voting for a Dem, but I god dang sure can't vote for Trump. I'm wondering if that's what's going on. I'm going to grab the phone.
I wonder, we're getting some texts in here too. I'll read at least a couple of them. I would vote for RFK in a second. My vote in Colorado for Trump wouldn't matter anyway. Well, that's a good point, because in those winner-take-all states, the only thing that matters is who gets the most, right? So I guess in that circumstance, it only impacts the popular vote, which for right now and hopefully forever has absolutely no impact on who's president of the United States. Because once we go to that ridiculous thing that, by the way, the voters approved, let's be clear, we have approved the idea that we will make our votes almost like what the GOP did with, hey, if you abstain, you have to go with the majority. We're now going to go with the majority. Colorado's votes will go the direction of the Californias and the coast, which is craziness. But in the setting that we have for electoral vote, I get it, man. Maybe that's your vote to oppose Trump. Like, you could have 100,000 people that decided to vote for RFK in Colorado that didn't vote for Trump instead. That's a great point, Texter. It would not change the outcome of where our electoral votes go by a whiff. But if every state had something like that, some sort of huge number that turned out as a protest vote, I wonder what it could do. I mean, I wonder what message it would send if that sort of thing happened. 303-696-1971. I also wonder if it wouldn't also embolden the idea of a potential third-party candidate for 2026 or 2028. 2026 for us, it's going to be all the big races up. It's going to be a Senate seat. It's going to be a governor, attorney general, secretary of state, treasurer, a lot of big ones, all the congressional seats. Does this embolden that? It'd be interesting to see how that thing turns out. 303-696-1971 is the number. And let me do this. Let me cut away for a break before we come back and hit this final segment and get the calls that we have coming in on the line. I got to tell you, though, at first, about our friends at QC Kinetix. I am still in the throes, although I've struggled, people. I'll be honest. I've struggled with hitting the long runs the last couple of weeks. I owe a 20-mile run to the marathon gods. I haven't yet done it. I did 9 miles around Central Park and whatnot. And while it felt okay and I got good and sweaty and I kept my pulse at about, 290 or whatever it is when it's about ready to pop out of your chest, at the end of the run, even that shortened run, I just felt that pain in my knees that comes with me trying to ask my body to do stuff it just doesn't want to do at my age. So I take the QC Kinetix, and I'm telling you that I take them at their word that if this thing progresses into something where I need longer term relief, I don't have to go under the knife. I don't have to take all the pills. I don't have to go through weeks and weeks of therapy and time off my feet. That's the thing that I think is plaguing my dad with the decision he has to make about his foot. And I know he's looking into QC Kinetix as well. If you're one of those folks that just hasn't had the knee replacement, you haven't had the hip replacement, and dang, you'd like to avoid it as much as possible, give these guys a call, would you? See what they're all about. Ask them all the hard questions and then give them a shot. 303-900-8986. It's a local number for local medical health professionals that can answer your questions. 303-900-8986. 303-900-8986. Say, hey, this dude George talked to me about you. I'm going to give you a shot. What do you have going on? You can check them out at qckinetics.com on the web. QC Kinetix starts with a K, ends with an X.com. But I don't think you do anything until you talk to a person on the phone at least and get them to answer your questions. That's qckinetics.com. George Brauchler will be back in just a bit with your calls, your texts, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler right back with you on 710 KNUS. Final segment. Let's get right to the phone lines. Mike, you're on 710. Mike, what do you think?
Oh, am I on?
You are
Hello?
on. Hey, Mike, you're
I'm
there.
on. Yeah, okay. Yeah. First, I want to give a shout out and a thanks to your producer, Billy Bob Thornton, there for ruining my day. This is a while back ago. Hold on. He and you were talking, and he said how grocery stores change things around just to make you waste more time. I thought it was just to personally piss me off. I think it's personal. Now, as far as
Billy makes the observations, so it's good stuff. What do you got?
Oh, well, RFK Jr., you think about it, he sounds just like his dad. Got that weird little funny voice, too.
What do you think about that, though? Does it matter to you? And is this the guy from not from that perspective, but from a substantive perspective that you could see casting a vote for?
Yeah, it shouldn't, but it does. You know?
Why?
And it's absolutely, well, it is because it's an inflexive, knee-jerk reaction. And then, the taller presidential candidate wins, generally speaking, and the deeper voice and the more rugged looks. I mean, think of JFK and Reagan. And, I don't know. I mean, I'm worried DeSantis is going to go the way of, Scott, the Wisconsin governor in 2016, Scott Walker.
Yeah, Scott Walker. Yeah. Yep. He's already lasted longer than Scott Walker because Scott tapped out after the first debate.
Okay. Yeah, I know. He was my first choice, and after that it was Ted Cruz, and then finally I'm begrudgingly like, okay, I'll go with the Donald. And I really ended up liking it. And,
do you worry that your vote here in Colorado won't make a difference, but do you worry that if other folks in other parts of the country took that position that it would hurt Trump more or Biden more?
They voted for RFK Jr. I think on the face of it, why wouldn't it hurt Biden more?
Why?
I mean, they're both Democrats.
You would, and I agree with you. But Charlie Kirk's point is, I think this guy, and Billy found that, I don't know what that poll was, Billy, but Billy found a poll that said it looks like, even though both Trump and Biden start out ahead of him, 38 to 19, the 19 that Kennedy has come more from Trump than Biden.
I don't know why that'd be, but.
Well, I think it's because in part, it's really hard to get behind Biden. I just don't know a lot of people who are enthusiastic Biden supporters. They're just enthusiastic Democrats in charge of government power supporters. And so if they got somebody else who comes along, they can't bring themselves to vote for Trump, but they got someone else who comes along who seems like he's that party rejecting, conservative, right-leaning guy, but with some lefty social issues or something like that. I can see people being drawn into that. What was that, Billy?
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh, Mike. Hey, Mike, forgive me. Well, Billy just screamed in my ear music, which means you and I have done a great job of having a conversation that takes us to the end of the show. I don't know how much time we have left. My thanks to Dave Williams for coming on. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to ask you a little bit about the Catholic Church and all that other stuff. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.